Chapter 424. Even two little fellows at the true first realm dare to block this Lord's path? It seems that I should find a time to go to the upper realm and make an example out of this so-called celestial venerable. Sensing the pressure released by the yin-yang emissaries, Chu Bei narrowed his eyes. He wasn't angry, but he was imposing. The yin-yang emissaries were stunned when Chu Bei saw through their cultivation. When they came back to their senses, anger immediately appeared on their faces. "How dare you! You insulted the celestial venerable again. You deserve to die!" The yin emissary clenched his fists tightly. A ball of black divine fire appeared between his brows. Then, from inside out, black underworld flames surged out from all over his body. With the black fog surrounding his body and the faint underworld flames, the yin emissary looked extremely strange. His figure was thin and blurry, like a demon from hell. The yang emissary also ignited his divine fire. His divine fire carried the light of the 5 elements. It was peaceful and vast, and its aura was shocking. In an instant, the yin-yang emissary's aura suddenly rose. It was extremely terrifying. The faint aftershocks shook the void and made it sizzle. "The celestial venerable who insulted the celestial venerable, die!" As the cold voice fell, the yin emissary opened his mouth and spat out a ball of underworld flames. It looked dark, but it burned the void until it distorted. Its power was astonishing. It swept toward Chu Bei at an extremely fast speed. Facing the intimidating underworld flames, Chu Bei's expression was unmoved. He casually opened his right hand. Chaos spewed out from his palm and instantly crushed the underworld flames. Seeing the yin emissary's underworld flames dissipate, the yang emissary frowned. He immediately waved his hand toward the void. A golden staff appeared in his hand. He waved it fiercely. Blood-colored lightning intertwined and crossed the void toward Chu Bei. Chu Bei's face was still expressionless. With a wave of his hand, the void shattered again and again. The blood-colored lightning shattered along with it. "His power and aura are very strange." Seeing this, the yin-yang emissaries looked at each other. Other than surprise, there was also some seriousness on their faces. Vaguely, they seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. The mysterious person in front of them seemed to be much stronger than they had imagined. Thinking of this, the yin-yang emissaries looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Then, they made a unanimous decision. "Roar!" Suddenly, the emissary of hell let out a sharp roar. As the sound of his roar faded, a sea of white bones appeared behind him. All sorts of skeletons stood up, and many skeletons came to life as they lunged towards Chu Bei. This was a forbidden technique from the upper realm. At this moment, it was summoned by the underworld emissary. Many bone spirits stood in the sky and fought together. It was as if hell had descended, and the dark fog was vast and mighty. The yang emissary shouted and chanted sutras. He activated another forbidden technique, causing flames to surge and magma to boil. From another direction, he surged towards Chu Bei with overwhelming might. "Is this a battle between gods? How terrifying!" As they watched the scene unfold on the battlefield, the immortal mountain's cultivators below all revealed expressions of shock. Regardless of whether it was the yang emissary or the yin emissary, the forbidden techniques they used were far beyond what they could compare to. Once they entered the battlefield by mistake, they would most likely die instantly and turn into ashes. Chi. However, just as these two terrifying forbidden techniques were about to engulf Chu Bei, a large primal chaos hand swept out from the void. With a light pat, the skeletons, spirits, and magma disappeared without a trace. Before anyone could react, 2 screams rang out between heaven and earth. In the next moment, the yin-yang emissaries were grasped by the giant primal chaos hand. Their expressions twisted in pain. Miserable screams rang out from the yin-yang emissaries' mouths. Their howls were filled with pain, as if they were being tortured by the 18 layers of hell. Their bodies became distorted, and the sound of bones shattering and flesh being crushed could be heard. It made one's heart tremble. How is this possible? Those are 2 true deities from the upper realm. They were actually defeated. Has he already reached this level of terror? Not even true deity great ones are his opponents. Who else can subdue him now? The surrounding immortal mountain cultivators looked at the yin-yang emissaries who were painfully struggling in the rippling hand. When they looked at Chu Bei again, their eyes were filled with fear. Their faces were full of disbelief. The 5 young men and women who also came from the upper realm opened their mouths wide. They looked at each other in dismay, as if they wanted to say something. However, because of fear, they wanted to threaten Chu Bei, so they swallowed their words back into their hearts. With the sound of the air being torn apart, another 4 supreme experts flew out from the immortal mountain. They landed next to Qin Fa one after another. When they saw the situation on the battlefield, the 4 supreme experts were first stunned. When they reacted, they were all just like Qin Fa. They were so stunned that they were like wooden blocks, not moving at all. Release us! The yin-yang emissaries struggled with everything they had. They tried many times to reignite their divine flames and break free, but they all failed. Gradually, the 2 individuals' auras became weak, and their divine force fluctuations became increasingly unstable. It was as if they were going to wither away at any moment. This one wants to leave, yet you 2 insist on stopping me. What is the point of this? Chu Bei looked at the yin-yang emissaries with an expressionless face. You came from the upper realm, so there's no way you haven't heard of the Immortal Mountain's inheritance. The Immortal Mountain will not let you off for what you are doing right now. Even if you hide in the lower realm, you will still suffer the endless pursuit of the Immortal Mountain. The yin-yang emissaries coldly stared at Chu Bei. Their words were full of threats. You truly don't have the slightest bit of self-awareness. When the emotionless voice sounded, the yin-yang emissaries exploded within the giant primal chaos palm with a pung sound. Their souls were completely wiped out. The ear-splitting explosion resounded above the immortal mountain. Qin Fa, Qin Shouqing, the other supreme experts, the cultivators from the immortal mountain, and the 5 young men and women who also came from the upper realm suddenly froze. They were unable to snap back to reality for a long time. No matter what, they couldn't believe that the yin-yang emissaries who represented the Immortal Mountain's inheritance were killed just like that. They were completely caught off guard. It was to the extent where they were all stupefied. As they looked at the giant primal chaos palm that still hadn't scattered, they only felt absent-minded. Perhaps even the dead yin-yang emissaries didn't expect the one they threatened to kill so decisively. Otherwise, they might have compromised a bit. Now that the yin-yang emissaries are dead, how are we supposed to head to the higher realms? Could it be that we are also going to be buried in the great calamity? Hurry and contact the higher realms' immortal mountain. The supreme experts from the immortal mountain seemed to have thought of something and became incomparably flustered. You already killed the yin-yang emissaries, so what else do you want to do? Could it be that you really want to kill all of us? While looking at Chu Bei, who was slowly flying over, Qin Fa revealed an expression of fear. He didn't have the calmness that the Immortal Mountain's ancestors should have. However, Chu Bei only gave Qin Fa an indifferent look and didn't pay him any attention. He brought Shi Zhongtian and Shi Hao towards a mountain valley. Big brother, what should we do now? After Chu Bei and the others left, a supreme expert immediately walked over to Qin Fa's side and asked. Of course we have to inform the higher realms about this first. After speaking, Qin Fa's hands continuously formed imprints. He drew out a decree and sent it into the circular opening in the distant heavens. On the other side, Chu Bei already brought Shi Hao and Shi Zhongtian to a mountain valley. Inside the valley, multicolored light surged. It was an auspicious and peaceful place. Upon closer inspection, one could see 9 colored deer running about and 5 colored peacocks dancing about. This was a true divine earth. Silver waterfalls cascaded down from the mountain peaks and scattered down into the sky. There were all types of scenery within the depths. It was as beautiful as the divine realm. Divine auras pervaded the air. From top to bottom, the valley was divided into 6 large regions. This courtyard. When he saw the region below, Shi Zhongtian's body suddenly trembled. He was extremely familiar with the layout of that place. It was exactly the same as the courtyard he lived in the martial imperial manor. Soon after, Shi Zhongtian found a pair of familiar figures in the courtyard. His eyes couldn't help but become red. Xiling, my son! After a soft cry, Shi Zhongtian's tears flowed freely. So this is father and mother? Shi Hao stared blankly at the figures in the courtyard. A wave of warmth surged into his heart. His eyes became misty as he muttered to himself. For others, their parents were their closest relatives. They were always by their side and watched over as they grew up. However, for him, this was a type of extravagant hope. He had never seen them even now. He longed for this type of blood relationship. Now, he was finally going to meet them. How they must have missed you! Shi Zhongtian carried Shi Hao and took the lead to rush towards the region where Shi Xiling and his wife were. Pun! However, just as Shi Zhongtian was about to enter that region, all types of light suddenly rose from the sky. Symbols flickered, and a wave of surging power directly pushed Shi Zhongtian back. Father! Mother! Shi Hao shouted towards the ground. His voice echoed through the valley like thunder. Even so, there was no response from the couple in the area below. There is a supreme formation that has sealed off this valley. The formation's power is isolating it. We can see inside, but they cannot. Shi Zhongtian frowned. When his low voice fell, Shi Zhongtian clenched his fist. After accumulating power, he fiercely smashed it downwards. Hong Long! A powerful and sinister true hole appeared and threw itself at the great formation below. Wherever it passed, the void rang with sounds. In the blink of an eye, the true hole smashed into the formation, producing a heaven-shocking sound. However, it only produced a layer of ripples and did not cause any substantial damage to the formation. At the same time, in the valley below, in the corner of the martial imperial manor, a man sat cross-legged in the bamboo forest. His body swirled with Tao aura. His eyes were closed, as if he had transcended the mortal world. He was silent and unmoving. Suddenly he opened his eyes, stood up, and said, "What's wrong with me? Why did I suddenly think of Howard, and even feel like he's come?" The white-clothed woman opposite him raised her head and said, "Howard is often brought in by Qin Fa. Isn't it normal for him to come?" "No, I am talking about Stone Village's Howard. He came, and he is very close to us. This feeling is very strange." The man's eyes shot out two streaks of divine lightning. His body trembled slightly. "How is that possible? We haven't even left this place to find him, yet he has already come to find us." The white-clothed woman's voice trembled. Her beautiful eyes were wide open, and her graceful body was also trembling slightly. "Chi La!" Just as the couple was in a daze, the primal chaos above their heads surged. Then, a crisp, shattering sound rang out. They could faintly feel a wave of terrifying and strange power. In the next moment, the couple's line of sight widened. The mountain peaks and the sky that they had not seen for a long time could be seen. Chapter 425. Xiling, look! That is... Looking at the slowly descending figure, the white-clothed woman's lips trembled. Unknowingly, her eyes became completely red. "Father!" Shi Xiling's eyes locked onto Shi Zhongtian's body. At first, he stared blankly, but when he reacted, his voice was like rolling thunder. "Xiling, have you been well these past few years?" Shi Zhongtian's tears flowed freely. "We were only imprisoned." Shi Xiling hugged Shi Zhongtian and pointed at Shi Hao with a trembling hand. "Father, he is... Howard, your Howard, he has grown up. The Supreme Being Bone has also been retrieved." Shi Zhongtian's voice was somewhat sobbing. "Howard, are you really my Howard?" The white-clothed woman hugged Shi Hao. Even though she already knew the answer, she still couldn't help but speak with a trembling voice. Qin Yining caressed Shi Hao's face and looked at him in a daze. Tears rolled down her face. Even Shi Xiling's tiger eyes were filled with tears. His breathing was hurried as he tightly grabbed Shi Hao's shoulders. He wanted to laugh loudly, but tears still fell. At this moment, they were both happy and sad. All types of emotions coexisted. Father, mother, I am Howard. I came to find you. Sure Hao shouted loudly as tears flowed down his face. Even though he didn't have any memories of his parents, he knew that the couple in front of him had caused havoc in the martial imperial manner for him. They slaughtered in all directions, and in the end, they even left their home and came to the mysterious region. Howard, don't blame mother and father. It's not that we didn't want to find you, but that we were imprisoned here by the Immortal Mountains people. These past few years have truly been hard on you. Mother has let you down. Qin Yining tightly hugged Shihao. She couldn't hold back her longing for the past 3 years. She cried loudly and vented as much as she wanted. How many years had she been startled awake from her dreams? Unfortunately, her pillow was covered in tears. Shi Ziling's eyes were red. He endured his own emotions and reached out his large hands to hug Qin Yining and Shihao. The three of them hugged each other tightly and didn't say anything for a long time. Qin Yining caressed Shihao's face again and again. Sometimes she was happy, sometimes she cried, sometimes she giggled foolishly, and sometimes her face was full of regret. Father, how did you break through the great formation in the valley? That was set up by the Immortal Mountain's true deity. Also, how did you retrieve Hao's supreme being bone? After a long while, Shi Ziling pointed upwards and looked at Shi Zhongtian in confusion. Your father isn't that capable. It was my benefactor, Hao's master, who broke it. As for the supreme being bone, he was the one who got it. Shi Zhongtian spoke. From start to finish, he spoke about how Chu Bei brought back the supreme being bone for Shi Hao, and then came here to kill the two true deities in detail. Plop! After hearing Shi Zhongtian's words, Shi Ziling and his wife's faces were filled with shock. Clearly, they didn't think that their eldest son would benefit from a disaster and become the disciple of such a powerful person in Stone Village. After recovering from the shock, the husband and wife held hands and knelt in front of Chu Bei. Words of gratitude came out of their mouths. After Shi Ziling and his wife repeatedly expressed their thanks, they led Chu Bei into the house they were living in and treated him well. During their conversation, Chu Bei also understood why Shi Ziling and his wife were imprisoned. It was most likely because of Qin Yining. As the previous Immortal Mountain's holy maiden, privately marrying was a great taboo in the mountain. However, due to her special status, the Immortal Mountain's elders decided to imprison her for life. The host has helped Shi Hao reunite with his parents. Mission completed. The host has been rewarded with 1 use of Xiao Hei's power. Level 15 Commodity Authority has been activated 30%. Soon after, the system's voice sounded in Chu Bei's sea of consciousness. Another moment passed. This is Qin Fei's aura. They're here! Inside the house, Shi Ziling frowned. The originally carefree laughter immediately disappeared. A moment later, Shi Ziling, his wife, Shi Zhongtian, and the others appeared outside the house. When he raised his eyes, he saw Qin Fei, Qin Shouqing, and the other supreme experts as well as the Immortal Mountain's cultivators. They were floating in the air and coldly looking down. To be more precise, they were staring at Chu Bei. What? Do you all have something to rely on? Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest and calmly looked at Qin Fei and the others in the air. Qin Fei coldly snorted and shifted his gaze away from Chu Bei. He then knelt down towards the distant sky and closed his eyes. His face was full of sincerity. At the same time, Qin Shouqing and the other supreme experts also kowtowed towards the sky and continuously prayed. Hong long long dash! Within the rumbling sounds, an incomparably large and dazzling halo appeared in the distant sky. Golden multicolored light shone brilliantly and covered the sky, filling the boundless world. Immediately after, within the sincere prayers of Qin Fei and the others, a boundless aura filled the air and shook the Immortal Mountain. With the Immortal Mountain as the center, it immediately spread to the entire mysterious region. This terrifying aura was as if an unimaginably terrifying existence was about to appear in this world. Could it be that a great figure from the higher realms is about to descend? Qin Yining hugged Shi Hao and raised her head towards the sky. Her expression greatly changed, and her entire body trembled. Xiling frowned. A long spear appeared in his hand. His aura continuously rose as he made his preparations for battle. Wang, the heavens trembled. Countless symbols flickered and flickered with the light of the great Tao. It was as if stellar streams were being created and destroyed. As time went on, in the distant heavens, complex and profound order appeared and flickered continuously. Terrifying fluctuations and incomparable auras interweaved together. The void was like a tattered painting scroll that trembled within the strange light and released Walala sounds. Upon closer inspection, those natural laws were cryptic and profound. They swirled with brilliant divine light and were extremely terrifying. Qin Fa, Qin Shouqing, and the other supreme experts became more and more respectful. They continuously kowtowed towards the heavens. Dang! The immortal mountain's main peak's great hall indescribably swayed. Following a strange metallic sound, a heavenly beam of light rose from the great hall and pierced straight into the heavens. Yining, who do you think is going to come down this time? Xiling looked towards Qin Yining at his side. His expression became more and more serious. I don't know. However, this type of battle, even in the higher realms immortal mountain, would have a revered status. Qin Yining shook her head. Her expression became more and more nervous. Qi La. Finally, the heavens split open. A several tens of thousands of zhang large immortal bird moved through the heavens. Its golden wings were like clouds that covered the heavens as they filled the air with boundless multicolored light. With a shake of its wings, thunderclouds covered the sky and heaven and earth exploded. This was an incomparably terrifying scene. With just a flap of its wings, the heavens were like porcelain that was struck. Cracks quickly appeared and extended into the distance. Heavenly Luan! That's the heavenly deity's mount! How could it be him that personally came? If it really is him, then we. With the appearance of the immortal bird, Qin Yining's face immediately became pale. Her eyes were completely filled with fear. If not for Xiling supporting her, her entire body might have already gone weak and fallen onto the ground. Qin Fa, where is he? Just as everyone's eyes were focused on the immortal bird's body, an indistinct and difficult to capture voice that was like rolling thunder resounded through the entire mysterious region. In that instant, with the immortal mountain at the center, the cultivators within a range of several hundred kilometers all rushed into the sky. At the same time, they all looked over with faces full of shock. As the indistinct voice fell, the symbol light in the distant heavens scattered down onto the earth. What followed was the incomprehensible chanting of sutras. Then, an enormous figure appeared above the immortal bird. It sat cross-legged on the back of the immortal bird, and its entire body was surrounded by a layer of resplendent silver rings of light. It was as if a deity was patrolling the three realms. What happened to the immortal mountain? Who is that person? Where did he come from? What does he have to do with the immortal mountain? Didn't you guys see that even the immortal mountain's old ancestor, Qin Fa, is kneeling in front of him? Heavens! As expected of the most mysterious power in the great region. Judging from that person's aura, I'm afraid that he has long surpassed the supreme expert realm. Countless cultivators hovered outside the immortal mountain. They all stared at the figure that sat cross-legged on the heavenly Luan in the distant heavens. Their faces were filled with shock and confusion. Immortal heavenly deity? The great calamity hasn't arrived yet, so why would he descend now? Could it be that he's here to receive the immortal mountain's supreme expert? But there's no need for him to personally do such a small thing. Could it be that the immortal mountain is in danger? Moreover, the trouble isn't small. Who was the one he was talking about before? Meanwhile, in several hidden corners of the mysterious region, powerful creatures woke up one after another. They all released terrifying auras. Judging from their auras, even the weakest of them had the strength of a supreme expert. At this moment, these powerful creatures that had slept for 1,000 years all cast their gazes towards the heavens above the immortal mountain. Disciple pays his respects to the heavenly deity. In the skies above the immortal mountain, Qin Fa led a group of supreme experts and disciples in kowtowing towards that figure. It really is the heavenly deity ancestor. Qin Yining's face was pale. She muttered to herself, as if she had lost her soul. She was extremely scared. She was scared that something unexpected would happen to this reunion that she had waited countless days and nights for. Shi Xiling remained silent. He only tightly hugged Qin Yining. His silver magical clothes shone, and his expression was extremely serious. He forcefully gripped the war spear. "Mother, you don't have to be scared. Master is extremely powerful. He will definitely be able to beat this bad guy away." Shi Hao rolled up his sleeves and obediently wiped away the cold sweat on Qin Yining's forehead. "And nothing will happen to us." Qin Yining pinched Shi Hao and forced a smile. "Yining, how much do you know about this immortal heavenly deity?" Shi Zhongtian frowned and asked Qin Yining. "He is my Qin clan's ancestor. He single-handedly established the immortal mountain. According to the records of our clan, he has already lived for over 10,000 years. Even in the higher realms, he is still a well-known giant that intimidates an area." When she spoke up to hear, Qin Yining gave the figure on top of the immortal bird a look. She took a deep breath and said, "As for his cultivation, forget about the lower realms. Even in the higher realms, those who can compare to him are few and far between. He can be said to be truly unmatched in the heavens above and earth below." "Unmatched existence?" When he heard this, Shi Zhongtian gave immortal heavenly deity another look, and then he snuck a look at Chu Bei beside him. His eyes carried a strange expression, and it was unknown what he was thinking. "Qin Fa, where is that person?" The ethereal voice that was filled with unmatched might sounded again. When he heard this shout, Qin Fa immediately broke out into a cold shiver. Then, after deeply bowing towards immortal heavenly deity, he impatiently reached out a finger towards Chu Bei. On top of the heavenly Luan, symbols flickered within the eyes of that figure. When his gaze landed on Chu Bei's body, he couldn't help but release a murmur of confusion. "You are the one who destroyed this sovereign's divine statue, and killed this sovereign's yin and yang emissaries?" Immortal heavenly deity's voice sounded again. His enormous divine consciousness surrounded Chu Bei. However, what shocked him was that he couldn't capture the other party's divine energy fluctuations. If he didn't see Qin Fa personally pointed out, he wouldn't even believe that someone without any divine energy fluctuations could kill the yin and yang emissaries that ignited their divine flames. "Ancestor, Yining sincerely asks for your respected self's forgiveness. My benefactor only accidentally killed the yin and yang emissaries for the sake of our family's reunion. If your respected self insists on punishing us, Yining is willing to die in my benefactor's place." When she saw immortal heavenly deity's gaze land on Chu Bei's body, Qin Yining didn't hesitate in the slightest. She immediately let go of Shi Hao and took 2 steps forward to stand in front of Chu Bei. She continuously kowtowed towards immortal heavenly deity. "As the previous holy lady, you originally had great prospects. According to this sovereign's plans, you should have already arrived in the higher realms and been personally taught by this sovereign. However, you just had to betray the Tao rules and privately marry these sinners. What qualifications do you have to beg this sovereign right now?" On top of the immortal bird, that figure gave Qin Yining a cold look and berated. Chapter 426. In the distant heavenly dome, when immortal heavenly deity's shout sounded, a wave of tangible and terrifying pressure immediately surged from his body. It was like a roiling river as it directly descended towards Qin Yining. Wherever it passed, the void would collapse. However, right when this wave of terrifying pressure was about to surround Qin Yining's body, a hazy mist strangely rose around the latter's body, easily dispersing that unstoppable pressure. "You have some methods after all." When he saw this scene, immortal heavenly deity didn't pay Qin Yining any attention and instead looked towards Chu Bei. He still had that arrogant expression of looking down on all living things. When his calm voice sounded, immortal heavenly deity began to release a mysterious and difficult to understand strange sound, as if he was chanting sutras. With each word immortal heavenly deity chanted, an enormous symbol mountain would appear out of thin air and then crush towards Chu Bei's location. This was an extremely strange and terrifying scene. What kind of relationship does that person have with Immortal Mountain? A single word, a mountain. How terrifying is this? Outside Immortal Mountain, countless cultivators were stupefied. Their faces were full of disbelief as they looked at Immortal Heavenly Deity. He sat on top of the 10,000 Zhang Immortal Bird and continuously chanted sutras. Unmatched spiritual force surrounded the area, and the entire mysterious region was resonating with him, trembling slightly. Symbols jumped out from Immortal Heavenly Deity's mouth one after another, forming enormous mountains. What he chanted was the immortal scripture. It could save all living things, but it could also destroy all living things. Looking at the tens to hundreds of incomparably terrifying great mountains above their heads, Qin Yining's expression was deathly pale. Shi Zhongtian and Shi Ziling's expressions were also extremely ugly. "Let's go together!" Shi Zhongtian and Shi Ziling gave each other a look and made their decision at the same time. Immediately afterwards, Shi Zhongtian raised his longbow and used his sleeve as an arm. A dark arrow pierced through the void and shot towards the nearest great mountain with a forceful aura. Shi Ziling raised his spear and threw it out with a loud shout. The great golden-winged Peng's void image appeared in front of the spear, and its golden feathers seemed to be burning as it faced an enormous mountain. Kacha! However, the mountain that was pressing down was as hard as ancient black iron. Not only did it not shatter in the slightest, it even shattered the arrows and spears. Two mere formation arrangement realm cultivators, no more than ants, actually want to block the attack of an Empyrean? How laughable! You overestimate yourselves! Qin Fei's cold snort was filled with disdain. He glanced at Shi Zhongtian and Shi Ziling in disdain as his words were filled with mockery. When an Empyrean takes action, who can match him? At this moment, Qin Shouqing also took a step forward and stood beside Qin Fei. His face was also filled with disdain. However, as soon as Qin Shouqing's mocking voice fell, the indestructible mountains began to ripple. Within the ripples, these incomparably enormous mountains began to tremble. Then, kacha-kacha sounds rang through the air. They turned into pieces of crushed stone and smashed down towards the immortal mountain below. Pung-pung-pung. High up in the sky, tens to hundreds of mountains were shattered by a strange and formless force. They turned into countless enormous crushed stones and smashed down towards the immortal mountain below. They poured down like raindrops and carried terrifying might. Within the continuous rumbling sounds, the immortal mountain that was originally covered in jade palaces and looked like a paradise had craters carved out one after another in the blink of an eye. It was a scene of devastation, and the main peak was even more so turned into ruins. That fellow called an Empyrean by Qin Fei and the others truly has heaven-defying methods. However, that mysterious individual who knows Shi Ziling and his wife isn't weak either. I can see it. Those large mountains formed from symbols all carry the aura of the great Tao. If it was us, forget about a single mountain, we might not even be able to withstand a single corner of it. However, this person, even though he doesn't have the slightest trace of divine force fluctuations, he was able to silently neutralize this type of danger. I never would have thought that I would be able to see a battle between experts that transcended the supreme expert realm in my lifetime. The battle between two great figures is truly a pity for the immortal mountain. A holy land has been reduced to such a state. In the distance, a group of cultivators swept their eyes over the immortal heavenly deity and Chu Bei. In the end, they looked towards the immortal mountain and sighed. Who is this person? He was actually able to neutralize the immortal heavenly deity's attack. Could it be that he has some type of secret method to avoid the great calamity, and has already cultivated for tens of thousands of years? That's impossible, right? In my opinion, this person definitely came from the higher realms as well, and he is also a great figure in the higher realms. In several hidden corners of the mysterious region, the powerful creatures that had awakened all looked towards Chu Bei's body. Their words carried suspicion. Qin Fei and Qin Shouqing looked at Chu Bei in shock. Their faces were full of shock. It was clear that they never expected this person to be able to neutralize the Empyrean's methods. In their hearts, the immortal heavenly deity was the ruler of this world, an unrivaled existence. Once the Empyrean took action, no one could match him. Regardless of whether it was a god or a devil, they would all be instantly turned into ashes. Your strength is still not enough. Just watch from the side. Chu Bei's hands were behind his back. His eyes indifferently swept over Shi Zhongtian and Shi Xiling. After speaking, he stepped into the air. Wherever he passed, silver radiance would surge. It was resplendent and dazzling. In an instant, Chu Bei arrived in the sky above the immortal heavenly deity and faced him head-on. His clothes fluttered about in the wind, and his figure was like an unrivaled immortal supreme. Who exactly are you? Immortal heavenly deity was still sitting on the immortal bird, but this time, the gaze he used to look at Chu Bei with became serious. Chu Bei still didn't say anything and only laughed. There was a hint of playfulness in his smile, as if he was mocking him. Forget it. Regardless of what inheritance you have behind you, if you dare to disobey this Supreme One, then you will have to pay the price. When these cold words fell, immortal heavenly deity got up from the immortal bird. His appearance that was originally wrapped in turbid energy became even more illusory and difficult to see through. Following a cry, the heavenly Luan below immortal heavenly deity's feet seemed to have received an order. Its golden wings interweaved with lightning and chaotic energy violently surged. Then, its golden wings shook. All of the essence energy from the 5-phase mountain range below gathered and entered its wings, rushing into its mouth and nose. In an instant, the heavenly Luan's aura erupted to an incomparably terrifying level. However, its body was the exact opposite. It continuously shrunk, and in the end, it actually turned into a golden longsword that released resplendent and dazzling radiance. This longsword was extremely strange. A pair of golden wings extended from the body of the sword, releasing an incomparably holy aura. Xiao! The golden longsword flickered and turned into a streak of light. It pierced through the heavens and aimed directly at the space between Chu Bei's brows. Under this sword, heaven and earth violently trembled. At this moment, in the sky above the immortal mountain, all of the cultivators within a 1,000 li radius stopped circulating their spiritual energy. It was as if they suddenly became ordinary people. What was even more terrifying was that they seemed to have lost their senses. They couldn't move for a moment. In their line of sight, there was only the heaven-destroying and earth-shattering divine sword in the distant sky, as well as the mysterious youth who was still calm and unruffled even though he was about to be pierced through. Dang, just when everyone thought that a hole was going to appear between the mysterious youth's brows, that peerless divine sword was pinched between the latter's 2 fingers. The fierce aura that could kill gods and Buddhas came to an abrupt stop. It was also at this moment that the binding force on everyone's bodies disappeared. They regained their freedom. He actually stopped it. He actually managed to stop such a terrifying sword with just 2 fingers. And from the looks of it, he seems to be very casual and relaxed. Heavens, where exactly did this fellow come from? If we can find out his down name, we should be able to find out about him from the ancient records. That's true. Such a terrifying existence can't be unknown. The spectating cultivators in the distance all swallowed. Their blazing gazes were fixed on Chu Bei's body. The astonishment in their eyes became even more intense. Kacha! Suddenly, a sharp and clear sound rang out from the skies above Immortal Mountain. It spread into the distance until it reached the entire mysterious region. Immediately after, a series of mournful wails rang in everyone's ears, mixed with intense pain. When they looked over, they saw that the enormous golden sword in the sky had been broken in half by the mysterious youth's 2 fingers. It once again returned to the heavenly Luan's original body. However, the heavenly Luan was now split in half. Golden blood scattered across the horizon like a long river. It continuously cried out in grief. It was clear that it was enduring unbearable pain. The cries made one feel pity for it. Stop! Immortal heavenly deity immediately shouted. At the same time, he reached out a large sparkling white hand that was sparkling like jade. It slapped towards Chu Bei. This palm was enough to shake all of the present world's experts. It flowed with a thick aura of the great Tao and destroyed everything in its path. However, even though immortal heavenly deity immediately took action, he was still too late. Chu Bei's palm turned into a blade and hacked downwards. An enormous blade radiance formed from primal chaos tore through the void. Wherever it passed, one could vaguely see many stars behind it. The blade radiance passed through the heavenly Luan's two halves. In that instant, the heavenly Luan's cries disappeared into the horizon. The two halves of its body disappeared along with it. Hong! The blade radiance's aftermath merged with immortal heavenly deity's palm imprint, directly shattering the heavens. How could this be? Qin Fa, Qin Shouqing, and the others looked at each other. Their mouths were wide open. The other cultivators looked at each other in dismay. They all felt as if they were struck by lightning from a clear sky. Their bodies were numb as they looked at the battlefield. They had lost their souls. Their heavenly deity's mount, the heavenly Luan, was actually killed by that mysterious individual. Even when the heavenly deity took action later on, he still couldn't protect the latter. From the moment immortal heavenly deity appeared until now, all of the heavenly deity's attacks had been successfully neutralized. It was to the extent where his mount, the heavenly Luan, was even involved. When they thought of this, Immortal Mountain's cultivators revealed expressions of fear. Compared to before, their mental state seemed to have been shaken. You dare kill my mount? This sovereign will not allow you to enter reincarnation. Immortal heavenly deity's cold eyes locked onto Chu Bei. He released a loud shout that was full of vicious killing intent. In that instant, the hazy mist around immortal heavenly deity's body scattered, revealing his true appearance. He was astonishingly young, appearing to be no more than 18 or 19 years old. He was incomparably handsome and full of vitality. This was different from the dignified, simple, and gloomy appearance they had imagined. It completely overturned everyone's expectations. His head of hair shone, and his entire body seemed to be cast from gold. Unmatched natural laws were displayed. Die! His mount was killed. Immortal heavenly deity was furious. He used his true strength. Unmatched divine force rushed through the 9 heavens. A single word of cold shout sounded. A precious artifact flew out from immortal heavenly deity's body. It was shaped like a 5-phase mountain, and 5 types of light beams shot out. They merged into a precious imprint that floated above immortal heavenly deity's head and resonated with him. Hong Long Long. The precious imprint released a screen of light that sealed off the battlefield. It was as if it was scared that the shockwaves would destroy Immortal Mountain. Immortal heavenly deity took a step forward. Above his head, the heavens were crushed by unrivaled battle energy. With a wave of his sleeve, heaven and earth trembled. Chi La! Immortal heavenly deity and the precious imprint merged into one. Using his finger as a sword, he hacked towards Chu Bei. Immediately, the void split open. A pitch-black rainbow pierced through the heavens. It made one's heart tremble. Forget about a mere projection, even if your true body was here, I would still destroy you with a wave of my hand. Facing this terrifying attack, Chu Bei's face didn't reveal the slightest trace of fear. He was as calm and collected as before. When his calm voice fell, Chu Bei's body immediately enlarged. He was indomitable and gradually became as tall as the heavens. Unlike before when his aura was restrained, the current Chu Bei crazily circulated the Xiao Hei's power within his body. Chaotic ripples rippled in the surroundings. Just by calmly floating in the air, he gave off an indescribable pressure. All living creatures had to look up to him. Behind him, a belt of light that looked like a river of stars swirled about. He seemed to have existed since the beginning of time, as if he had existed since the beginning of time. Chu Bei took action. With a single fist, the entire heavens released a kacha sound and split into 4 regions. Everyone was stunned. They stared at the heavens in a daze, waiting for the collision of these 2 unmatched attacks. However, the heaven-shocking confrontation they imagined didn't appear. There wasn't even a world-shaking explosion that could make ghosts and deities weep. In almost an instant, Chu Bei's fist imprint destroyed immortal heavenly deity's sword radiance like it was made of rotten wood. Kacha! Within the battlefield, Following a sharp and clear sound, the precious imprint above immortal heavenly deity's head shattered. And immortal heavenly deity's pupils suddenly contracted. Under the tremendous force, his body staggered backwards. However, before he could stabilize his body, the figure in the distance had already closed in on him. The other party slapped over again. Primal chaos surged at the center of his palm. Tens of millions of stars surged and suppressed down. Hong Long! In that instant, the heavens were covered in white radiance. It was as if tens of thousands of suns were shining down on the great earth at the same time. All of the cultivators below closed their eyes at the same time. They couldn't endure this dazzling radiance. When this sovereign's true body descends, I will definitely avenge today's grudge. If I don't kill you, the hatred in this great one's heart will never disappear. Suddenly, immortal heavenly deity's roar that was filled with dense killing intent sounded from within the white radiance. It then spread into the distance, and resounded through every corner of the mysterious region. Gradually, the roar disappeared. The distant heavens became deathly still. Did the battle end just like that? That person disappeared. Did the deity consecrated by Immortal Mountain die? However, from what I heard before, that deity seems to only be a projection and not his true body. If that deity's true body descends, then perhaps the one who lost would be that mysterious person. The white radiance dissipated. The cultivators in the distance looked at the heavens above Immortal Mountain with restless minds. Their eyes were all filled with astonishment. The space that was originally shattered by the battle was currently being repaired by a wave of chaotic energy. The figure that descended from the heavens with the 5 elements' great imprint above his head disappeared. What remained was a young man wearing a long robe. He was as calm as the clouds and as gentle as the wind. From start to finish, his expression didn't change at all as he slowly descended from the sky. Chapter 427. Immortal heavenly deity was actually defeated. Don't forget, that's just a clone. The true body has descended, so who is stronger and who is weaker is still unknown. Hang, if it was you, would you be able to defeat that clone? Regardless, he is still a giant from the higher realms. Even if it's a clone, he can still crush you to death with a single finger. With his strength, even the impending great calamity can't do anything to him. In various parts of the mysterious region, the powerful creatures that had awakened all looked towards Chu Bei's body. They looked at each other in dismay, and their words carried shock. It was clear that the result of this battle exceeded their expectations. How could it be like this? Heavenly deity Great One was defeated. The Immortal Mountain's cultivators muttered. It was as if they had all lost their souls. They could not accept the result before their eyes. When the battle ended, Qin Fa and Qin Shouqing's faces immediately turned ashen. The Immortal Mountain's supreme experts felt as if they had been struck by lightning. They looked at Chu Bei with numb expressions. They were at a loss as if they were wooden sculptures. You, don't come over! Looking at Chu Bei, who was approaching step by step, Qin Fa's face became deathly pale. Cold sweat trickled down his back. In Qin Fa's eyes, Chu Bei, who had a warm smile on his face, was like an emissary that came from hell. Qin Shouqing on the side swallowed his saliva. The fear in his eyes was no less than Qin Fa's. This Great One originally had no intention of bickering with you all, but you all actually invited Immortal Qin and tried to use his hand to suppress this Great One. Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest. His eyes swept past Qin Fa, Qin Shouqing, and the others. He had a ruminating expression on his face. Unfortunately, even if it is your ancestor, in this Great One's eyes he is no different from you all. He is just a slightly more powerful ant. When they heard this, Qin Fa, Qin Shouqing, and the other supreme experts trembled. Just as they were about to say something, a wave of coldness attacked them from all directions. It penetrated deep into their bones, and an indescribable wave of fear surged within their hearts. It was as if the god of death was beckoning them. Rumble, rumble. Within the soul, intimidating rumbling sounds, the Immortal Mountain's cultivators only felt their bodies tremble. It was as if their bodies were restricted, and they couldn't move. Raising his head to take a look, Zhang Xian's eyes widened, and cold sweat began flowing down his forehead uncontrollably. Above them, a 30,000-meter-long giant palm formed from interweaving chaotic ripples slammed down towards them, arriving before them in an instant. Rumble! The 10,000 zhang large palm crushed downwards. Qin Fa and the others' figures were directly turned into nothingness. Then, they slammed into the immortal mountain below. Following an enormous sound, continuous mountain peaks collapsed and the great earth caved in. A 10,000 zhang palm imprint replaced the towering immortal mountain. The immortal mountain has been destroyed! Heavens, the strongest power in the Xian region is gone just like that. The cultivators in the distance looked at the immortal mountain that no longer existed. Their expressions were stupefied, and they couldn't snap back to reality for a long time. At the same time, a large malevolent face could be vaguely seen in the distant heavens. A pair of cold eyes locked onto Chu Bei, carrying heaven overflowing killing intent. Judging from its appearance, it was precisely immortal heavenly deity. He seemed to be trying his best to break the laws of heaven and earth so that his true body could descend and fight Chu Bei again. Only, the time wasn't right. He could only glare at Chu Bei with unwillingness. Chu Bei gave the higher realm's immortal heavenly deity a disapproving look, and then he walked towards Shi Hao. "Mother, didn't I tell you that master was extremely strong?" Shi Hao ran into Chu Bei's embrace. At the same time, he didn't forget to turn around and say this to Qin Yining. His small face was full of happiness. When she heard Shi Hao's words, Qin Yining subconsciously nodded, as if she had lost her soul. Her face was absent-minded. She was already completely stupefied, and her brain seemed to have lost its ability to control itself. She stood there without moving like a piece of wood, staring blankly at Chu Bei who was walking over. She knew that Hao's master was extremely strong, but she never expected him to be strong to this degree. Not even the ancestor could do anything to him, and his clone was even destroyed by the other party. Immortal heavenly deity was someone who had lived for tens of thousands of years. He was one of the giants of the higher realms. However, it was precisely this type of unrivaled existence that had just been defeated. Previously, she was scared that the ancestor would kill her benefactor, so she immediately stood out to plead for leniency on his behalf. Now, it all seemed like a joke. Shi Zhongtian and Shi Xilin's faces were similarly numb. When they looked at Chu Bei, sparks seemed to explode in their eyes. They were full of shock. "Your family can be considered reunited. This great one will bring you all to a quiet place." Chu Bei's calm voice sounded. He then indifferently looked at the tens of thousands of zhang palm imprint below. With a wave of his hand, he brought Shi Hao, Shi Zhongtian, and the others away. Wasteland region, Stone Country Imperial Palace, a great hall. "What? You destroyed Immortal Mountain's mysterious region inheritance? Senior, what level of cultivation do you have exactly? Even the higher realm's giant immortal heavenly deity suffered under your hands." Inside the Great Hall, Thousand Joy Supreme Expert, Ghost King, Stone Emperor, and the other Supreme Experts looked at Chu Bei in shock. Their faces were full of astonishment. This Great One's cultivation is decided by fate. When faced with Stone Emperor and the others' expectant gazes, Chu Bei smiled knowingly. In the perfect world's cultivation system, there was the blood transformation realm, heavenly passage realm, spirit transformation realm, and engravement realm. When one reached the engravement realm, one could already be considered an expert. Above the engravement realm was the formation arrangement realm, which was the realm Shi Zhongtian was at. In the lower realm, one could already be considered a peak expert. As for the Supreme Expert realm, which was the realm Stone Emperor and the others were at, they were already overlords of the lower realm. Above the Supreme Expert realm was the Divine Flame realm, also known as the False Deity realm. Above that was the True Self realm, which was the realm of the Yin-Yang emissaries that Chu Bei slapped to death in the mysterious region. After the True Self realm was the Heavenly Deity realm, Void Tao realm, Self-Severing realm, Self-Release realm, and Supreme Being realm. Compared to Shrouding Heaven, the supreme being realm in the perfect world included half emperor to great emperor. As for Xiao Hei's power, it could be said that he was strong, but he was stronger than him. In the next few days, because he didn't receive any new missions from the system, Chu Bei stayed in the martial imperial manner and focused on teaching Shi Hao cultivation. Mission 3: Enter the 100 Shattering Mountains and obtain the Desolate Tower and Divine Striking Stone. Mission completion reward: 1 use of a level 19 commodity. Finally, Chu Bei heard the system's voice. It was also on this day that Stone Emperor and Supreme Expert Thousand Joy came to visit and told Chu Bei about the 100 Shattering Mountains opening. You said the 100 Shattering Mountains appeared? In that case, I can accompany you on the trip. The reason why Chu Bei agreed to Stone Emperor's request was naturally because of the system's mission. The 100 Shattering Mountains opened once every few years, and it had already been 100 years since the last time it opened. Different from the past, the 100 Shattering Mountains actually didn't have any restrictions on cultivation this time. In other words, even Supreme Expert Thousand Joy and the others could enter. According to Stone Emperor, the great calamity of the world was about to arrive, and the supreme experts of the wasteland could no longer sit still. In addition, the 100 Shattering Mountains didn't have any restrictions this time, so these supreme experts immediately set their sights on the 100 Shattering Mountains. It was rumored that the 100 Shattering Mountains was an ancient battlefield. There was no lack of ancient supreme precious artifacts, and even ancient immortal artifacts. In the minds of these supreme experts, if they could obtain a supreme precious artifact or an even rarer ancient immortal weapon, then they would have a sliver of hope when facing the great calamity. It was also because of this that the 100 Shattering Mountains no longer belonged to the continent's outstanding youths, but rather to the supreme experts who were about to face the great calamity of the world. Master, can I go with you to the 100 Shattering Mountains? Shi Hao blinked his eyes towards Chu Bei. Of course you can. Chu Bei pinched Shi Hao's tender cheeks. Thank you, Master! Shi Hao's face revealed excitement. 15 minutes later. Broken Sky City. This was an ancient city. Due to its location, the population was sparse all year round. However, every time the 100 Shattering Mountains opened, it would become incomparably prosperous. The liveliness even surpassed that of the capital. Have you guys heard? This time, the 100 Shattering Mountains is different from the past. There are no cultivation restrictions. I was just wondering why there were so many powerful cultivators in the city. Turns out there were no restrictions. In that case, all of the peak experts of the great region will gather in the 100 Shattering Mountains this time. Among them, there is no lack of old monsters who have lived for over 1,000 years and woke up from seclusion. Are you talking about those supreme experts? Endless streams of horses and carriages filled the city. Apart from the sounds of buying and selling on both sides of the street, the discussions of the passers-by were even more endless. Hong Long. When evening arrived, a hazy and faintly discernible mist rose outside of Broken Sky City. Soon after, an enormous sound shook the heavens and earth. Tens of thousands of strands of multicolored light shot out, as if a deity woke up from its slumber. It opened its eyes from the primal chaos, and streaks of lightning shot out from its eyes. In that instant, everyone in Broken Sky City was alarmed. The 100 Shattering Mountains passage has opened! Suddenly, a powerful cultivator in the city cried out in alarm. Then, he took the lead to turn into a long rainbow and rush towards the direction of the tens of thousands of multicolored light. Over there, primal chaos surged. Lightning interweaved, thunder rumbled, and torrential rain poured down. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Outside the city, a blurry shadow appeared in the originally flat area. It was like a mountain range, faintly discernible. It was precisely the 100 Shattering Mountains. As far as the eye could see, there were tens of thousands of cultivators around the 100 Shattering Mountains, and their cultivations varied. The powerful supreme experts and the weak blood transformation cultivators were all over the place. They were all waiting for the 100 Shattering Mountains to completely form and for the final layer of light to shatter. There are quite a few familiar faces. In the sky above the 100 shattering mountains, the Stone Emperor and Supreme Expert Thousand Joy looked around and couldn't help but sigh. Brother Fire, long time no see. In the sky above the 100 shattering mountains, the Stone Emperor nodded and greeted a middle-aged man wearing a fiery red dragon robe. There were two famous ancient countries in the wasteland. One was the Stone Country, and the other was the Fire Country. This red-robed man was the Fire Country's Stone Emperor. He was an outstanding person from the same era as the Stone Country's Stone Emperor, and he had also entered the Supreme Expert realm several years ago. Behind the Fire Emperor stood three elders. Their auras were restrained, and they were also senior Supreme Experts. Calculating the time, it's already been 10 years. I didn't expect that this calamity would still come. In the end, we will be like our ancestors, disappearing in this great calamity. The Fire Emperor sighed. Isn't this 100 shattering mountains an opportunity? Perhaps we can find an immortal artifact inside. The Stone Country's Stone Emperor pointed at the 100 shattering mountains that were about to open and laughed. Chapter 428. Brother Sure, who is this person beside you? The Fire Emperor greeted the honored Sir Qianxi, the Ghost King, and the other honored Sir before his gaze landed on Chu Bei. His eyes were filled with confusion. Right from the start he had noticed Chu Bei. Both the Stone Emperor and the honored Sir Qianxi were standing behind him, as if he was their leader. A senior who has lived for tens of thousands of years, the Stone Emperor said. Tens of thousands of years? Has he not experienced the calamity before? Or has he survived the calamity? Hearing the Stone Emperor's words, the Fire Emperor was stunned. When he regained his senses, he looked at Chu Bei in disbelief and sucked in a breath of cold air. The three honored Sir Qianxi behind him were equally shocked. Senior didn't tell us about this, the Stone Emperor said as he looked at the Fire Emperor. Understanding the Stone Emperor's meaning, the Fire Emperor didn't pursue the matter. However, he looked at Chu Bei with suspicion. Qianxi, I didn't expect you to still be alive. A low, hoarse voice sounded from not far away. It was a strange snake. Its entire body was red, and below its head, it had 2 bodies, 6 legs, and 4 wings. Its scales were dense and sinister, making it look strange and ferocious. Fei, you're not dead yet. How can I be ahead of you? The honored Sir Qianxi snorted coldly. Do you want to have a friendly duel? The Fey-honored Sir Qianxi's eyes were cold as he fixed his gaze on the honored Sir Qianxi. Its tail danced in the air and a red shadow flashed like lightning. Do you think I'm afraid of you? The honored Sir Qianxi took a step forward and his aura started to rise. So many years have passed. Don't start fighting every time you see me. The calamity is coming and we don't have many days left to live. Can't we put aside our past grievances and talk? A butterfly flew over from afar. It was flowing with colorful lights and emitted a dazzling radiance, causing everyone to back away. It was more than a meter long. When it spread its wings, it emitted a beautiful light. Its entire body was covered with natural runes that flowed with mysterious, profound meanings. That's the cracked demonic butterfly. It is rumored that with a flap of its wings, 10,000 li of the sky can be torn apart. This is something recorded in ancient texts, someone said in a low voice, revealing an expression of fear. It shouldn't be a pure-blooded demonic butterfly from ancient times, right? Even if it's not a pure-blood, its aura is definitely a veteran venerable. Demon butterfly venerable, your aura has become even stronger. Could it be that you're about to break through that layer of shackles? King Yu looked at the heaven-splitting demonic butterfly and asked. It's not far. Unfortunately, the great calamity is coming. Perhaps we won't be able to wait until that day. The heaven-cracked demonic butterfly shook its head and sighed. 9-headed lion is here too. At this point, the Fire Emperor looked towards the west and spoke out. A moment later, a sound that sounded like a divine bell rang out, causing everyone's ears to buzz. He saw a lion with 9 heads walking through the air. Its entire body was golden and dazzling. It was extremely ferocious, domineering, terrifying, and intimidating. They're all familiar faces. When we were young, we fought for hegemony. I'm afraid that only a few of us survived from that generation. Who would have thought that with the great calamity approaching, we would meet again and enter the 100 shattering mountains together to search for opportunities? The 9-headed lion's eyes swept over the Fire Emperor, Stone Emperor, and the others. With a roar, its entire body erupted with golden light, suppressing everyone's aura fluctuations. Its voice was like thunder, shaking the mountains in the distance. All of the cultivators' minds were shaken. Soon after, 80% of the wasteland region's supreme experts gathered in the skies above the 100 shattering mountains. Apart from the human experts who had been cultivating in seclusion for 1,000 years, there were also many descendants of archaic creatures. These archaic creatures either had a single horn, 2 heads, or a human head with a snake body. Their bodies all released precious light and heaven-overflowing auras. They were incomparably powerful. "Master, look over there! Little Red has also come!" Sherhouse suddenly cried out. His small hand excitedly pointed towards the west. There, an entirely scarlet sparrow flew over. After glaring at Sherhouse, it landed on his shoulder. "Its aura has become quite a bit stronger." Chu Bei smiled as he looked at the vermilion bird. "It's all thanks to Senior." The vermilion bird respectfully nodded towards Chu Bei. Apart from the vermilion bird, the Zhuyan, heaven-swallowing sparrow, and Qiongqi also arrived in the skies above the 100 shattering mountains. Perhaps it was because of their restraining fear towards Chu Bei, but they all maintained a relatively large distance from Chu Bei. Hong Long! After waiting for a long time. Finally, following an enormous sound, the barrier of light around the 100 shattering mountains shattered. In the end, it roared like a great wave as it engulfed the heavens. Great waves overflowed into the heavens, causing the entire world to rumble violently. The scene was extremely shocking. "The 100 shattering mountains have opened! We can enter now!" When the barrier of light shattered, waves of excited cheers reverberated around the 100 shattering mountains. Immediately after, thousands to tens of thousands of cultivators poured into the 100 shattering mountains, covering the sky and covering the earth. All types of brilliance flickered about. At the same time, a flood dragon swooped down from the sky, instantly disappearing into the mountains. A large golden bird flapped its wings, its speed not inferior to the flood dragon from before. The cracked demonic butterfly flapped its wings and streaked across the sky, disappearing in a flash. The 9-headed lion roared towards the sky, its roar shaking the heavens and shaking the earth, rumbling loudly. At this moment, all the venerables moved together, rushing towards the 100 shattering mountains at the first instant. They wanted to find an opportunity to resist the great calamity that was about to befall them. "Brother Sure, I hope that we can all survive." The Fire Emperor nodded towards the Stone Emperor again, then left with the 3 venerables behind him. "Senior, let's move out as well." The Stone Emperor and Venerable Thousand Joys gazes landed on Chu Bei, waiting for his instructions. "This is an ancient battlefield, so there are indeed many treasured artifacts. Let's go and explore." Chu Bei placed his hands behind his back, then led the group into the 100 shattering mountains. At the same time, he released his divine sense to the extreme. As expected of the 100 shattering mountains, this small world is full of treasures. If I can cultivate here, I'll be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Spiritual herbs, so many spiritual herbs. Treasured herbs that are rarely seen in the outside world can be found everywhere here. We're rich, we're rich! The moment the group of cultivators entered the 100 shattering mountains, they felt the rich spiritual qi that was different from the outside world. The spiritual qi in this mountain was even more abundant than some ancient treasured lands, and there were spiritual herbs everywhere. Compared to ordinary cultivators, the venerables did not care about the spiritual herbs in the mountain at all. To them, these spiritual herbs were useless. What they needed was a supreme treasured artifact to resist the great calamity that was about to befall them. Hence, these venerables went straight into the depths of the mountain range after entering. The central region of the 100 shattering mountains was filled with ruins as far as the eye could see. The eerie white bones and corpses were a ghastly sight, and one could faintly hear the sounds of ancient battle spirits fighting, which was terrifying to the soul. This battlefield was very large, and it was divided into several regions. Regardless of whether it was the human venerables or the ancient venerables, they immediately occupied a region after arriving at the battlefield, searching for an ancient treasured artifact that could resist the great calamity. Chi! A ray of multicolored light shot out from the ruins, like a silver line, and quickly pierced through the sky. There really is a treasured artifact! It even produced a spiritual awareness! Looking at the multicolored light that rushed into the sky, a venerables cried out in alarm. Next to the divine spring, a fist-sized white stone that was sparkling like jade trembled. It glanced at Chu Bei and could not help but mutter. However, just as it was about to leave, an inexplicably huge suction force wrapped around its body. Then, the white stone only felt that it was uncontrollably flying into the air. It let out a cry of surprise. "Let me go! I'm just an ordinary stone. I don't have spiritual intelligence, and I'm not a treasure. I'm no different from an ordinary stone." The white stone struggled in Chu Bei's hands. Its cries were filled with fear and panic. "Master, this stone can actually speak. But it feels a little silly." Sure Hao took the white stone and carefully sized it up with a look of disdain. "Don't look down on it. It's one of the archaic vicious 10, the divine striking stone. A speck of dust can fill the sea." Chu Bei's lips curled into a faint smile. "What? Archaic vicious 10? Hearing this, Sure Hao's face was filled with disbelief. He rubbed the white stone and swallowed his saliva. "It can be compared to the Kuan Peng, True Dragon, Phoenix, and Qilin?" Chu Bei nodded indifferently in response. Then, he took the divine striking stone from Sure Hao's hand. Only the desolate tower was left to complete the mission. "Master, I'm going to pick all the treasures in this medicinal garden." After speaking, Sure Hao got busy. Hong Long! Just as Sure Hao finished plundering the medicinal garden, an incomparable energy storm erupted in the direction of the ruins. The heavens and earth trembled, and miserable and painful cries could vaguely be heard. Following that, under everyone's astonished gazes, thin and long cracks appeared in the sky, and countless purplish-red flames emerged from the cracks. In an instant, the distant sky was covered in flames, and it turned into a blazing sea of fire. Endless magma surged and surged. The scene was bizarre, as if doomsday had arrived. The moment the sea of flames appeared, the temperature of the entire 100-break mountain range instantly rose. Countless cultivators immediately took out their spirit chi armor to resist the high temperature. "This flame looks like the firmament flame recorded in the ancient books. Where did this pagoda come from? Firmament fire, that was a top-notch flame used to refine treasures. In the outside world, even a single ball would cause countless experts to fight over it, but it can actually be directly mobilized from the void. If anyone can control this pagoda, I'm afraid that it won't be long before their strength can reach the top of the entire wasteland." Some of the cultivators recognized the purple-red flames in the sky and immediately cried out in surprise. Their voices were filled with shock. The group of venerables looked at the sea of flames above their heads, and their faces were also filled with shock. In the blazing sea of flames, magma surged, and a phoenix could be seen dancing, vaguely letting out the cry of a phoenix. At this moment, the bone pagoda was floating in the center of the sea of flames, accepting the smelting and forging of the firmament flame. Could it be that it's injured and is repairing itself? It could also be that it's transforming and refining itself once again. No matter what, this pagoda is definitely not inferior to a supreme artifact. It could even be an immortal artifact from the immemorial era. The group of venerables' gazes were fixed on the bone pagoda, and their eyes were faintly burning. If they could really control an immemorial immortal artifact, then they would definitely be able to safely pass through the following great calamity. "Don't wait anymore, attack immediately!" The Fire Emperor, Stone Emperor, Ghost King, Nine-Headed Lion, and the other venerables all shot out divine rainbows at the heaven and earth pouch that the heaven-cracked demonic butterfly had taken out. The heaven and earth pouch that had gathered the power of all the venerables instantly shone brightly, and a large number of runes were released from the mouth of the pouch. Like waves, they surged into the sea of flames, and headed straight for the bone pagoda. "You bunch of mortals, you're really insatiable!" Suddenly, a faintly discernible voice that was filled with supreme majesty that caused one's heart to tremble inexplicably rang out in the battlefield. "Did you hear that? Did that voice come from that bone pagoda?" The expressions of all the cultivators present changed drastically. The pure white bone pagoda was repeatedly disturbed, and finally, it started to riot. Then, the body of the pagoda shook, and a terrifying energy storm instantly rippled out with it as the center. Rumble! Accompanied by a shocking loud sound, huge waves surged up from the sea of flames. In an instant, the ruins of the battlefield below split open, and the continuous mountain range collapsed, and the entire 100-break mountain range shook because of it. "This power, not good!" The nine-headed lion's expression changed drastically, and he was the first to let out a cry of alarm. The heaven-cracked demonic butterfly, Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, and the other venerables all seemed to have realized that the situation was not right, and they immediately rushed into the distance, trying to leave this place. However, before they could escape far away, a reddish-purple energy thread appeared out of thin air and wrapped around their bodies. In an instant, their bodies were unable to move, and the spiritual energy in their bodies quickly flowed out, along with the life force in their bodies. "Something seems to have happened to those venerables." The cultivators below looked at the sky in fear, and instinctively began to retreat. Far in the sky, the mysterious bone pagoda was still hovering in the center of the sea of flames, but the body of the pagoda was releasing countless energy threads, and the other end of these energy threads were wrapped around the bodies of the venerables. At this moment, these seemingly insignificant threads were releasing a dazzling light, and they were like vampires, continuously absorbing the life essence of the venerables. "We were still too careless. This is also good, at least we have companions on the way. Speaking of which, the great calamity is coming anyway, and we can't escape." The venerables were unable to move, and with their cultivation, they naturally understood their current situation. They had already become the nourishment of that mysterious bone pagoda. At this moment, the nine-headed lion, heaven-cracked demonic butterfly, Fire Emperor, and the others seemed to have become unafraid of death, as if they had already seen through life and death. "It's all your own fault." In the sky, the bone pagoda trembled, and spoke again. "Let them go, they're just looking for a way to survive." At the same time that the bone pagoda's voice sounded, another calm voice sounded in the sky. Soon, in everyone's line of sight, two figures appeared in the sky, one big and one small. Chubei arrived at the battlefield, and with a wave of his sleeve, layers of chaotic ripples surged out like waves. Wherever the chaotic ripples passed, the energy threads released by the bone pagoda instantly dissipated. "Who is he? I've seen him outside, he came with Stone Emperor." All the venerables working together couldn't resist this mysterious bone pagoda at all. But he actually broke through the mysterious bone pagoda's attack alone. Could it be that his strength is above the venerables? No wonder Stone Emperor was so polite to him back then. In an instant, everyone's eyes were cast towards Chubei and Shihao, and their brows were filled with shock. "It's him." After the nine-headed lion, cracked demonic butterfly, Fei, and the other venerables regained their freedom, they looked at each other, and stared at Chubei in shock. Even though the Fire Emperor and the three venerables behind him were similarly shocked, it wasn't as exaggerated as the nine-headed lions. After all, before they entered the 100 Shattering Mountains, they already knew from Stone Emperor that this person was an old monster that had lived for tens of thousands of years. As for the Qiongqi, Vermilion Bird, Heaven-Swallowing Sparrow, and Zhuyan, these four great descendants, there wasn't the slightest bit of shock on their faces, as if everything was reasonable. "Senior, you've returned." Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the others' faces were pale. They bowed towards Chubei, inwardly rejoicing. Fortunately, They came to invite this senior, or else they would have already met the king of hell. Who are you? Within the sea of flames, the bone pagoda bobbed up and down, and the surrounding mist was withdrawn. It became increasingly resplendent and dazzling, and its entire body was sparkling and translucent, almost transparent. There was a heart-palpitating fluctuation spreading from it. Does knowing who this great one is have any meaning to you? Chu Bei's words carried a smile. Boom! The bone pagoda didn't say anything else, and directly exploded. Like a meteor streaking across the sky, it was like a scorching sun that had been compressed to the extreme. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of Chu Bei. Chu Bei smiled knowingly, and casually stretched out his right hand. He slapped forward, and a white light blossomed in the center of his palm. Pa! A crisp sound rang out, and the distant sky was instantly filled with a pure white. Even the sea of flames disappeared from everyone's sight. A terrifying power exploded and spread out in the white light, engulfing the entire 100-shattering mountain range. Under the aura of this collision, countless souls that had died in battle flew out from the ruins, and circled around the sky, wailing incessantly. In the distant sky, just as the incomparably terrifying shockwaves of the collision were about to affect the spectating cultivators below, a thin layer of chaotic light stretched across the horizon, and successfully prevented the shockwaves from spreading. When the white light dissipated, and everyone saw the scene in the sky, they were all stunned. They saw that the bone pagoda that had a monstrous aura, like a meteor from outer space, was currently being held in Chu Bei's palm. The sea of flames that had originally been summoned by him had disappeared without a trace. Senior, did he subdue that mysterious bone pagoda? The Stone Emperor, the Ghost King, and the other venerables' gazes shot towards the bone pagoda in Chu Bei's palm. They were a little dazed, and had yet to recover from their shock. One! Suddenly, the bone pagoda's insides trembled, and a brilliant ray of light shot straight into the sky from the top of the pagoda. In the next instant, a huge crack appeared in the sky, and a stream of crimson lava spewed out from the crack. It seemed to have come from outside the realm. Following that, the surging lava that carried a terrifying aura surged with flames, and symbols flickered as it poured down towards Chu Bei like a tidal wave. Facing this surging lava that hung in the sky like a waterfall, Chu Bei didn't dodge or evade. There was still no trace of fear on his face, and the corners of his mouth were still curled up in a faint smile. Chi! Just as the lava was about to drown Chu Bei calmly pointed out with a finger, and the void instantly froze. At this moment, the surging lava that was originally surging down like a river was suddenly confined, and then the space distorted and compressed. Kacha! The surging lava let out an inconceivably crisp cracking sound, and then it quickly dissipated into the void. Wang! The bone pagoda was unwilling, and its trembling sound became even sharper, directly shaking the souls of everyone present. An increasingly terrifying aura spread out from the top of the bone pagoda, spreading from the sky to the entire 100-break mountain range. Everyone inexplicably trembled. Screech! Tens of thousands of rays of light shot out from the top of the bone pagoda, and under everyone's gaze, they gathered to form a huge true phoenix. The true phoenix flapped its wings, and a monstrous light burst out. Following a cry that came from the top of the food chain, the true phoenix opened its mouth wide, and flames spewed out as it swooped down. Don't waste your energy. Chu Bei spoke, and his voice was especially calm. As his indifferent voice fell, Chu Bei raised his right hand and waved it again. A rippling hand easily crushed the true phoenix into a fried dough twist, and in the end, it turned into nothingness. If I wasn't injured, and my cultivation was less than half, how could I have fallen into your hands? The bone pagoda let out a cold snort, and its words carried a sense of arrogance. It continuously struggled, continuously releasing terrifying energy, but no matter how it attacked, it was unable to break through the palm that contained the power of primal chaos. Your cultivation has fallen to less than half, but how do you know that this lord's strength is at the peak? Chu Bei played with the bone pagoda, and smiled indifferently. I have never seen you before. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the bone pagoda no longer trembled, and calmed down. This Lord's era of glory is even older than the era you have experienced. Chu Bei pretended to be mysterious, and looked at the void at a 45-degree angle, as if he was recalling the past. You have ideas about me? The bone pagoda held a suspicious attitude towards Chu Bei's words. Follow this lord. Chu Bei reached out his hand to stroke the bone pagoda, and said, This lord can help you fuse with the other half of the pagoda. Hearing this, the bone pagoda suddenly trembled, clearly because it was too excited. After a long while, Chu Bei's left index finger pointed, and a lottery disc appeared, with a swirl in the center. The bone pagoda flew into the disc swirl with a so sound, and then disappeared along with the disc. He really subdued that mysterious bone pagoda. A supreme being precious artifact, so envious. When you have his cultivation, you will also be able to subdue a supreme being precious artifact. However, in my opinion, you will stay in the heavenly passage for the rest of your life. Below, countless cultivators' eyes were fixed on Chu Bei, and their eyes were filled with respect. No matter which world it was, the strong would always be the target of worship for the weak. Senior, do you know the origin of this pagoda? After recovering from their shock, the Stone Emperor, Ghost King, Thousand Joy Supreme Expert, and the others came to Chu Bei's side, and pointed at the mysterious bone pagoda above Shi Hao's head, their faces filled with respect. The nine-headed lion, Fei, and cracked demonic butterfly also followed, and their eyes were filled with confusion. Is this how you mortals want to know about me? You don't have the qualifications to know. Without waiting for Chu Bei to speak, a disdainful voice suddenly sounded from the void, as if it came from Chu Bei's body. Hearing this, the supreme experts looked at each other in dismay. Although they were angry, they didn't dare to show it on the surface. After all, they had just personally experienced the terror of this bone pagoda, and they almost died. Chapter 430. Host has obtained the ancient desolate tower and the divine striking stone. Mission completed. Host is rewarded with the right to use a level 19 item once. The system's voice rang out. Chu Bei looked at the Stone Emperor. I have completed my task here and am preparing to leave. Do you want to come with me? Senior, did you come here for this pagoda from the very beginning? The Stone Emperor asked in a probing manner. You can say so. Chu Bei nodded and didn't hide anything. Senior, you and Howard should return first. The great calamity is coming. I still want to look for opportunities. The Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the others looked at each other and bowed to Chu Bei, making the same decision. All right. Chu Bei nodded and waved his sleeves, bringing Shi Hao with him as they disappeared into the void. After Chu Bei left, the group of venerables started to search for treasured artifacts in the ruins again. If the great calamity is coming and you are unable to resist it, you can come to the martial Imperial Manor. I will ensure your safety. Just as the group of venerables was chasing after the treasured artifacts, an emotionless voice rang out in the sky. Hearing this voice, the Fire Emperor, Nine-Headed Lion, Cracked Demonic Butterfly, Cheongqi, Heaven-Swallowing Sparrow, Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the rest of the venerables were stunned. When they came to their senses, their faces were filled with excitement. Did you hear that? It's that Lord's voice. Could it be that he really has a way to avoid the great calamity? Since he dared to say that, he must be able to do it. Haha, we're saved. We don't have to die. No wonder he could live for tens of thousands of years. He really has the ability to avoid the great calamity. Senior said that the great calamity is just a massacre by the giants of the higher realm. When Senior said that he would ensure our safety, he didn't mean that he would help us avoid the calamity. He said that he would help us fight against the giants of the higher realm. After getting over their excitement, the group of venerables started to search for treasured artifacts again. However, they were much more relaxed now. What did that mysterious person mean when he left? I think he was talking to those venerables. Could it be that those venerables are going to face a great calamity? That can't be, they are the overlords of the higher realm. Not far away, countless cultivators were discussing intensely. After leaving the 100 shattering mountains, Chu Bei continued to focus on teaching Shi Hao cultivation. After all, the system didn't issue any new missions. Shi Hao's perception was extremely high, and with the support of the heavenly materials Chu Bei obtained from the system, he successfully opened up 8 heavenly passages in just 7 days. Such peaceful days continued until the 10th day. Rumble. A loud noise that shook the entire waste region came from the distant sky. At this moment, no matter which corner of the wasteland they were in, they could clearly feel their bodies trembling. It was like a temporary earthquake. When they raised their heads to look, the pupils of everyone in the wasteland region instantly constricted, and an indescribable chill surged in their hearts. In the entire desolate region, the originally clear sky was suddenly filled with dark clouds. It was as if the day had turned into dusk. Within the dark clouds, 9-colored lightning rumbled. Its aura was terrifying, and it was actually accompanied by chaotic energy. It covered the heavens, and the scene was vast and intimidating. The entire sky seemed like it was about to shatter. What's going on? Everything was fine, so why did the world suddenly change? What happened? Could it be that the end of the world is coming? This type of strange phenomenon has never been recorded even in ancient texts. My heavens, could it be that some kind of incomparable supreme treasure is descending from the heavens? This is a strange phenomenon that engulfs the entire region. The instant the heavens changed, in the wasteland region, not only the cultivators, all of the ordinary people raised their heads at the same time. Their faces were full of shock as they looked at the 9-colored lightning above their heads. Senior, you've finally come! Look at the sky, the great calamity has arrived! Within Stone Country Imperial Palace, Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and Thousand Joy Supreme Expert revealed expressions of fear as they looked at the sky. There is no need to panic. Chu Bei indifferently swept his eyes over the heavens. His expression didn't change in the slightest. He sat upright on a chair and leisurely sipped on his tea. Seeing this, Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and Thousand Joy Supreme Expert looked at each other and stood on the side. Now that the great calamity had arrived, they truly couldn't remain as calm as Chu Bei. After all, the records of the great calamity in their family records were too terrifying. No one above the supremacy level would be spared. They knew that Chu Bei was very powerful, but because this was the first time they were facing an unknown great calamity, their hearts were still pounding with an inexplicable fear. Stone Emperor, activate the ancestral altar and see what the other places in the region are like. Thousand Joy Supreme Expert said. In the 8 regions, there were countless ancient and mysterious altars. Once these altars were activated by energy, they could be connected to each other. Although these mysterious altars couldn't be used as teleportation arrays, they could be used to monitor teleportation images. As these ancient altars consumed a lot of energy, no one would normally activate these altars. However, due to the impending great calamity, these ancient altars had been activated by various major forces one after another half a month ago. Rumble! As the Stone Emperor activated the altar, the void above the altar rumbled. Gradually, several palm-sized images appeared. Suddenly, one of the images enlarged rapidly. The size of these images was determined by the intensity of the violent energy of heaven and earth in that area. In the first large image, the sky in the image suddenly shattered like glass, and an enormous claw reached out from underground. It was surrounded by hazy primal chaos, and it immediately scattered the roiling dark clouds above. This enormous claw was thick and simple, as if it had been buried underground for countless years. There was still a mud shell between the claw that hadn't been removed, and it carried the vicissitudes of time. Master, those are the mountain peaks outside the village. Grandpa Village Chief and the others will be fine, right? Shi Hao recognized the mountain peaks in the image. He pointed at the continuous mountain peaks behind the enormous claw and cried out in alarm. Don't worry, with the lightning strike wood, there won't be any problems. Chu Bei smiled and pinched Shi Hao's cheeks. Senior, what exactly is hidden underground? It has already far surpassed the supreme expert realm, right? Stone Emperor and Ghost King stared at the image with faces full of shock. That claw was too large. It was a greenish-gray color, and it covered the heavens. With just a shake, the entire mountain range and the surroundings shook. The great earth ruptured, and smoke and dust rushed into the sky. In the image, the originally clamorous noise immediately became quiet the instant the enormous claw reached out. All of the birds and beasts, and even the ants and bugs, were trembling. It was as if an ancient savage beast had awakened. An indescribable pressure engulfed the boundless mountain forest. An old tortoise, but on its back is the supreme divine treasury. Chu Bei lowered the teacup in his hands and shot a glance at the enormous claw. His words were indistinct. Supreme divine treasury? Then has it also experienced several great calamities? Stone Emperor continued to ask. Chu Bei nodded. Every time there is a great calamity, there will always be giants from the higher realms looking for it. However, because of how powerful it is, even if these giants from the higher realms find it, they will still return empty-handed. Just as Chu Bei's voice fell, ripples appeared in the sky above the enormous claw. An incomparably enormous foot stepped down from the ripples, covering the heavens. 9-colored lightning rumbled under its feet, accompanied by roiling mists. Its divine might was matchless. Hurry and look, there really is a giant that came down. He's coming for the supreme divine treasury. Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the other venerables looked at the foot that had suddenly appeared in the image, and the shock in their eyes became even more pronounced. In the image, the enormous greenish-gray claw collided with the foot that was descending from the heavens. The region instantly exploded, and the mountain range that was brimming with vitality was transformed into a stretch of ruins. Further away, one could faintly see a branch dancing between heaven and earth. Strange symbols flickered on it. Under the protection of the willow branch, a small village was actually completely preserved. Even such a frightening shockwave couldn't harm it in the slightest. What's up with that willow branch? It can actually protect that village from such a powerful explosion. Just as Stone Emperor and the others fixed their gazes on that willow branch, an earth-shattering boom rang out. In the next instant, the densely packed images above the altar shuddered at the same time. It's here! Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the others were all shocked. They saw divine light fill the sky at the same time, and a huge spatial crack spread out in the sky. Countless doors could faintly be seen taking shape and being constructed. Kacha, kacha, kacha! However, just as these doors were about to completely take shape, a strange ripple spread out, and then they suddenly exploded. In the images, these exploded doors were as gorgeous as fireworks, and they were as breathtaking as the morning sun. They were extremely beautiful, and there was a faint rain of blood and scales that were being annihilated in the void, heading toward destruction. Huh! These big shots have all failed. Could it be that they can't come down? That rain of blood. Could it be that the big shots of the higher realm have been injured? In that case, aren't they going to retreat? Looking at the shattered doors and the images, Stone Emperor, Venerable Thousand Joy, and Ghost King exchanged a glance, and there was a hint of joy between their brows. The 8 realms of the lower realm also have their own great Tao restrictions. Although these so-called big shots of the higher realm aren't weak, they can't come down so easily. However, since they've already made their preparations, they'll definitely come down in person regardless of the consequences. Chu Bei's eyes swept over the Stone Emperor and the others, and his words instantly poured a bucket of cold water over the venerables, extinguishing their fantasies and expectations. Sure enough, the countless images trembled again, and the shattered doors healed again. Moreover, the radiance in the surroundings became even more brilliant. What's going on with that door? Could it be that there really are celestials in this world? They all live in the sky. Why aren't there any records of this in the ancient books? Could it be that there are celestials coming to our wasteland through that door? Everyone in the wasteland realm raised their heads, and they stared unblinkingly at the doors that were about to take shape in the distant sky. Their mouths were wide open, and there was an expression of disbelief on their faces. Boom! Finally, a door was the first to take shape in the sky. The sky collapsed, and a living being in Taoist robes walked out from the door. It was incredibly huge, and its entire body was radiating brilliant light that illuminated the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Because the light around the living being in Taoist robes was too bright and resplendent, it was impossible to see his true appearance clearly. One could only tell that he was a Taoist. His aura surged like a tsunami, and it was also like a surging river of stars, vast and mighty between heaven and earth. Senior, he's descended into our wasteland realm. The Stone Emperor snapped out of his shock, and he pointed at the incomparably massive Taoist magical image in the sky. His eyes landed on Chu Bei's body, and a look of horror appeared on his face. Thousand Joy's Supreme Expert and the Ghost King's expressions also changed. The Taoist that walked out from the door was just too big, so big that everyone in the wasteland realm could see him if they raised their eyes. Master, someone else is coming down. Shihao's eyes widened, and his eyes shone brightly. His small fair hand pointed at the sky as he cried out in alarm. Lightning hacked about from the second door, and the sky shattered. A golden figure walked out from within. It similarly towered into the clouds, towering between heaven and earth, as if it had existed since ancient times. This was an old woman. She wore a golden robe, and on her head was a precious crown. When her eyes opened and closed, they were like 2 great suns that flickered about. A terrifying aura overflowed into the heavens, and divine light curled about the surface of her body. Chapter 431. So these are the giants of the higher realm? It's truly shocking and terrifying to the extreme! The Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the other supremacies couldn't help but gulp as they gazed at the Taoist and old woman. With their strength, they couldn't even fathom how terrifying these beings were. Accompanied by divine light, they were like the rulers of heaven and earth. Amidst their shock, the Stone Emperor and the other supremacies looked at Chu Bei again. There was a hint of suspicion in their eyes. This time, there are quite a few living beings that can be used for medicine. This trip wasn't in vain. Suddenly, the old woman's lips moved, and a hoarse voice reverberated through the wasteland. We don't have enough slaves. It's time to replenish them. The Taoist glanced at the old woman. After speaking, his body started to shrink until he disappeared from the sky. Not long after the Taoist disappeared, the old woman looked down. Boundless light surged from her body, enveloping the entire wasteland. Before long, the old woman looked as if she had found her prey. A satisfied smile appeared on her face. Then, she also disappeared into the sky. Buzz, buzz! In the next instant, 2 of the countless images above the ancient altar were magnified rapidly. The main characters of these 2 images were the Taoist and the old woman. Although these 2 giants had returned to their normal size, the terrifying aura that could suppress the 9 heavens was still present on their bodies. They were like supreme gods that could intimidate heaven and earth. For their cultivation bases, these 2 fellows have already reached the end of their lifespan. That's why they came down immediately to search for medicinal ingredients that can be used to refine medicine. Chu Bei picked up his teacup and took a sip. He glanced at the Taoist and the old woman in the images as he spoke calmly. Medicinal ingredients? Could it be that the spirit plants of the higher realm are inferior to those of the lower realm? The Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the other supremacies were confused. Chu Bei shook his head. They're looking for primordial descendants. These primordial descendants are all powerful beings in the higher realm. It's difficult for them to harvest them. However, in these 8 regions, these primordial descendants don't have time to truly mature. It's easier to harvest them. I see. How despicable! Upon hearing Chu Bei's words, the Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the other supremacies were instantly enraged. In the eyes of these giants, they were merely medicinal ingredients for refining medicine. Look! They've started! After a short while, the Stone Emperor's voice trembled as he pointed at the 2 gigantic images. One of the images was the southern abyssal mountain, After the old woman appeared, mountain torrents erupted, magma surged, and the ground collapsed. It was as if the life of the world had come to an end. The old woman held a medicine basket in her hand. As she flew, she would occasionally reach out and grab downward. One powerful creature after another was thrown into the medicine basket. Supremacy demon spirit, supremacy mountain clay, supremacy sky spider. The Ghost King's heart shuddered as he watched. Those living beings that the old woman had captured were all at the venerable realm, and he could faintly hear the miserable cries of these venerable realm cultivators. There was no lack of supreme experts struggling with all their might, trying to unleash their most powerful attacks. However, in front of the old woman, everything seemed so powerless. No! Please let me go! In the other image of the Taoist, a horned dragon roared, but it was unable to escape its fate. It faced the heavens and roared angrily. Its entire body emitted cold green light, turning into several tens of thousands of zhang in length. It wanted to soar into the sky and enter outer space, but this was completely futile. A large coarse hand reached over. No matter how many divine abilities it used, it couldn't escape. It was pinched between two fingers, as if it was catching a loach. My luck isn't bad, actually a branch of the true dragon. Its bloodline is extraordinary. If it was in the higher realms, it wouldn't be easy to kill it, as it would easily draw the ire of the Dragon Valley. The old Taoist grinned. He looked at the horned dragon in his rough fingers and nodded, saying, "Bring it back and raise it for a period of time. When the dragon blood returns to one, it will become a great mending medicine." After collecting the horned dragon into the precious gourd, the old Taoist continued forward. Soon after, he arrived in front of an enormous mountain. With a point of his finger, the enormous mountain split apart. "I beg you, please don't kill me!" Within the belly of the mountain, a large silver snake that was several tens of thousands of zhang in length coiled there. It looked at the old Taoist and flicked its tongue. Its voice was incomparably nervous, and it couldn't help but tremble. "Peak-level supreme expert, actually about to ignite your divine flame. Not bad, not bad, I just happen to need the silver snake gallbladder." The old Taoist ignored the large snake's pleas for mercy. He directly grabbed it with a palm and threw it into the gourd. At the same time, within a deep pool, a blue-eyed golden-eyed beast covered in flickering scales appeared. It was like a qilin, and as it sensed something, it directly pierced through the ground and fled towards the earth's core. "Stop hiding. The pond in front of my mountain gate is lacking some spiritual objects. It's perfect to raise you inside." The old Taoist took another step forward. Strands of auspicious energy from the large gourd swept away the supreme expert blue-eyed golden-eyed beast underground. In just a few minutes, the old woman and the Taoist had already plundered a third of the wasteland. Whether they were sleeping or hiding, supreme experts were collected one after another. It wasn't that these supreme experts were too weak, but rather that the old woman and the Taoists were too terrifying. Even in the higher realms, they were giant existences. No wonder none of the supreme experts could escape from the great calamities in the past. In front of the giants of the higher realms, supreme experts are nothing more than ants. The Stone Emperor, Ghost King, and the other supreme experts became more and more alarmed as they watched. Their bodies were covered in chills. When they looked at Chu Bei again, he was still sipping his tea, as calm as before. "Fire Nation. Fire Emperor, those two monsters are heading towards us. What should we do now? Wherever they go, regardless of whether it's humans or immemorial beasts, none of the supreme experts are spared." Just like the Stone Nation, countless images were floating above the ancient altar in the depths of the Fire Nation palace. The three supreme experts looked at the images of the old woman and the Taoist, their faces filled with fear. They then turned their gazes towards the Fire Emperor. "Let's go to the Stone Nation. West, half a month ago in the 100-Break Mountain Range, didn't that mysterious person say that if we sought his protection, he would ensure our safety?" The Fire Emperor took a deep breath as he looked at the two terrifying figures in the images. Can he really stop these two supreme experts from the higher realms? Now that things have come to this, we can only take a gamble. Anyway, based on our own strength, there's no way we can stop them. Amidst the fearful voices, the Fire Emperor and the three supreme experts tore open the void and flew towards the Stone Nation. At the same time, the desolate region's north underworld mountains split open and a strange snake flew out. Its entire body was scarlet red, and below its head, it had 2 bodies, 6 legs, 4 wings, and dense scales. It was strange and malevolent. We can't hide from them, we can only look for that person. The Fae Supreme Expert's tail danced in the air. Its scarlet figure was like lightning. With a chi-la sound, it tore open the void and flew towards the Stone Nation. Within the Immortal Valley, a butterfly fluttered about. It was flowing with brilliant colors and emitted a precious splendor. It was over a meter long. When it spread its wings, it emitted a magnificent auspicious light. Its entire body was covered in natural symbols that flowed with mysterious profoundness. The cracked demonic butterfly looked at the images above the altar in fear. It flapped its wings and turned into a divine rainbow as it flew towards the Stone Nation. What's going to come has finally come! A beast's roar that sounded like a divine bell rang out. A lion with 9 heads stepped into the air and flew into the distance. Its entire body was golden and dazzling. It was extremely powerful, domineering and terrifying, shaking one's soul. At this moment, 60% of the supreme experts of the desolate region moved. They all made the same decision and flew towards the Stone Nation. These ants are actually heading in the same direction. After the old woman and Taoist each took in a supreme expert, they both noticed this strange phenomenon. Their faces revealed a bit of confusion. However, this is also good. Directly wiping them out will save a bit of trouble. After muttering to themselves, the old woman and Taoist continued to follow their original route to pick out the supreme experts that were still hiding in their original locations. Stone Nation capital. Following a beast's roar, 4 streaks of light rushed over. The first to arrive at the imperial palace were the 4 great ancient descendants, the vermilion bird, Cheongqi, Zhuyan, and heaven's swallowing sparrow. Different from the fear they felt towards Chu Bei before, the Cheongqi, Zhuyan, and heaven's swallowing sparrow were surprisingly close to Chu Bei. Senior, the great calamity has arrived. Those fellows are too terrifying. I am not their opponent, so I can only rely on you. The vermilion bird floated on Chu Bei's shoulder and spoke in human language while looking at him. Xiao xiao xiao. Before Chu Bei even opened his mouth to reply, several streaks of light rushed over from the eastern side of the imperial palace. It was precisely the Fire Phoenix and 3 supreme experts. Immediately after, the Fei supreme expert, 9-headed lion, cracked demonic butterfly, and others, almost all of the supreme experts that entered the 100-shattering mountain range and heard Chu Bei's words came. The great calamity has arrived. I hope Senior can protect us. After the supreme experts arrived, they immediately bowed towards Chu Bei with respect on their faces. All of you should find a place to sit down. This one said that as long as you all come, nothing will happen. Chu Bei put down the teacup in his hand and nodded slightly towards the supreme experts as a response. Following his calm voice, Chu Bei waved his sleeve, and an enormous scene immediately appeared in the distant sky. Different from the scene above the altar, Chu Bei's scene could be seen by everyone in every corner of the wasteland region. Currently, there were 4 main scenes in the scene. The first one was the scene of a giant from the upper realm fighting against a giant tortoise for the supreme expert's treasure. The second and third were the scenes of the old woman and the Taoist killing the supreme experts. The fourth scene was the scene of the Stone Country's imperial palace. Senior, what are you doing? The supreme experts looked at Chu Bei in astonishment. While they were shocked by his methods, their eyes were filled with confusion. This one just wants everyone in the wasteland region to know about this. Chu Bei spoke, and at the same time, the entire wasteland region was in an uproar. Look at the sky. That tortoise is so big. What is it carrying on its back? And who is that person fighting with it? It's so scary. Aren't those two the immortals that walked out of that door earlier? What are they doing? Oh my God, that is dark bone supremacy. They are actually killing supreme experts. They are slayers, not immortals. That is the Stone Country's imperial palace. Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, Ghost King, demonic butterfly supremacy. Why are they gathered together? I remember now. When they were in the 100-shattering mountain range, they were talking about a great calamity that targeted the supreme experts. They were going to seek the protection of that mysterious person. Could it be that today is the day of the great calamity? In every corner of the wasteland region, countless cultivators were guessing. Chapter 432. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Amidst the earth-shattering sounds, several more doors were formed in the distant sky. Hearing this, the group of venerables in the Stone Country's imperial palace immediately looked over. The first to walk out of the door was a figure whose aura was not any weaker than the old woman and the Taoist. He was mysterious and hazy, surrounded by clusters of light. Each cluster of light seemed to have a god sitting cross-legged, worshipping him. Formless, boundless, and distant mysteries of the great path rushed over, and the sounds of worship shook the whole sky of the wasteland. When the second figure appeared, sword energy filled the sky, and chaotic energy surged. That was not an ordinary killing intent. It was accompanied by a power that could split open the sky, and it rushed into the sky. The third figure held a large halberd in his hand, and with a monstrous killing intent, he waved it casually, and the halberd light streaked across the sky, causing heaven and earth to rumble. "It's here! It's here!" When the fourth figure walked out of the door, the ancient desolate tower that Chu Bei had subdued flew out of his mind and floated beside him. It could not help but cry out in surprise. The fourth figure held a broken tower in his hand, and its appearance was exactly the same as the ancient desolate tower. "Don't worry, I will fulfill my promise," Chu Bei said with a smile as he looked at the ancient desolate tower. "This day has finally come." The ancient desolate tower was extremely excited. After its excitement, it restrained its aura, as if it wanted to catch the broken tower by surprise. In the sky, more and more figures walked out of their respective doors. In just a few seconds, 10 figures stood between heaven and earth. These giants from the upper realm glanced at the strange phenomenon that Chu Bei had created in the sky, and after some surprise flashed in their eyes, they no longer paid attention to it. Like the old woman and the Taoist, they had come down to the lower realm with a purpose. However, unlike the former, they were not here to kill venerables, but to find the supreme treasures that had been lost in the lower realm. After these giants from the upper realm walked out of the doors, their bodies started to shrink, and they appeared in different places of the wasteland. "That is the medicine capital! There are actually 6 giants! Is there something special about the medicine capital?" Soon, the Stone Emperor, the Fire Emperor, and the other venerables in the imperial palace were attracted by the scene in the sky. Looking over, there were actually 6 great leaders of the upper realm hovering above the largest medicinal field in the medicine capital. These 6 great leaders were standing in different positions, and it was obvious that they were hostile towards each other. "Master, are there any treasures there?" Shihao looked at Chu Bei, widening his large watery eyes. Chu Bei remained silent, but his eyes were filled with curiosity. Rumble! In the sky above the medicine capital, a big shot made a move, and the medicine field below instantly exploded. At the same time, thousands of rays of light shot out from the ground, emitting a holy aura. That's the first spiritual root! At this moment, the desolate tower beside Chu Bei could not help but exclaim. After the ancient desolate tower exclaimed in surprise, it spoke again. "However, it seems to be in the same situation as me. Its source is heavily injured. What exactly did it go through?" At the location of the explosion, an incomparably huge spiritual root floated up and down. It was dark gray in color and released an ancient aura, as if it had existed since the creation of the world until now. The traces of time were engraved on it. Mission 4, host obtains the first spiritual root. Mission completion reward, Xiao Hei's strength. Suddenly, the system's mechanical voice sounded in Chu Bei's mind. Chu Bei was slightly stunned. When he came back to his senses, his gaze fell on the spiritual root in the medicine capital. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Dang! In the sky above the medicine capital, one of the big shots could not help but take out a large golden bell. The sound of the bell was long and drawn out, shaking heaven and earth. It was simple and mysterious, flowing with endless mysteries of the great Tao. The large bell vibrated. It did not seem to have any substantial energy fluctuations, but a purple ripple spread out. It looked very gentle, but it could affect the stability of time and space. It surged towards the spiritual root. Seeing this scene, the other 5 big shots looked at each other, and also could not hold back. They all took action, as if they were afraid that the first spiritual root would be taken away by the big shot who took the lead. Rumble! Above the first spiritual root, an incomparably terrifying battlefield quickly formed. In the battlefield, there was a damaged chaotic disk that was suffused with mist. It quickly rushed over and smashed into the Tao bell. Soon after, a damaged small pagoda also joined in. This was a chaotic battle. Terrifying brilliance shot out in all directions, and the battle was incomparably intense. Chi! When the 6 big shots battle reached its climax, another fluctuation appeared above the medicine capital. A woman was sitting cross-legged. Her simple gray clothes covered her body. Her style was unmatched, and her immortal appearance was unparalleled. Her eyes shone, opening up a terrifying passageway. Once again, a chaotic world was formed. Her gaze directly shot towards the first spiritual root. Master, it's the dual-pupiled woman that took away Shuri. She also came! When he saw the gray-clothed woman's appearance, Sherhao's mouth opened wide as he cried out in alarm. The ancient dual-pupiled woman? The Fire Emperor, Crack Demonic Butterfly, and the other supreme experts were puzzled. Their eyes were also filled with shock. They could not believe that there was someone in the wasteland region that dared to fight against the giants of the higher realms and try to steal food from the tiger's mouth. The appearance of the dual-pupiled woman caused the 6 big shots to frown. They continued to fight for the first spiritual root without holding back. They're here, the 2 of them are here. Just as Chu Bei and the others were watching the battle above the medicine capital, the 9-headed lion suddenly cried out in alarm. Its claws pointed forward, and its expression was filled with intense fear. The Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, Ghost King, and the other supreme experts immediately shivered. They all looked at the 2 figures that had already appeared in the void in front of the Great Hall. Their throats instinctively moved, and then they subconsciously moved closer to Chu Bei. The figures that caused the supreme experts' expressions to change greatly were precisely the old woman and the old Taoist who had plucked everything along the way. Hurry and look, those 2 terrifying existences have arrived at Stone Country capital. Heavens! Will the Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, and the others be able to escape this disaster? Those 2 have taken in so many supreme experts along the way. It was also at this moment that the eyes of all the cultivators in the wasteland region were cast towards the scene in Stone Country's imperial palace. They all looked at the Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, and the other supreme experts. Their hearts tightened, and their faces were filled with worry. I didn't expect to encounter such a pure-blooded 9-headed lion here. This is truly wonderful. There are actually 4 great ancient remnant beasts. This time, we didn't come here in vain. Old Taoist, that heaven-cracked demonic butterfly is mine. I need it as a medicinal catalyst. Then I'll give it to you. The fei is delicious, I want it. As for these human slaves, let's split them equally. Hearing the conversation between the old woman and the old Taoist, the fei, the 9-headed lion, the heaven-cracked demonic butterfly, and the other supreme experts directly shivered. They shrunk their necks and hid behind Chu Bei, not at all behaving like the overlords of the wasteland. On the other hand, the Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, and the others' eyes were burning with anger. especially when they saw the old woman and the old Taoist looking at them as if they were looking at ants. If it weren't for the fact that their strength didn't allow them to do so, they would have already stepped forward to fight with them. Don't tell me all of you gathered together to think that you can escape this disaster together? Your idea is a joke. Instead, it saved me some trouble. Amidst his loud laughter, the old Taoist made his move. With a flip of his hand, he slapped out a huge palm towards the supreme experts in the hall. With one slap, 3,000 silver threads flew out and turned into a silver river, instantly filling the entire hall. At this moment, all the supreme experts in the hall were instantly confined and couldn't move at all. They could only watch as the old Taoist's huge palm became bigger and bigger in their vision. The supreme experts' faces were filled with fear, and their eyes were filled with terror. However, just as they were about to be grasped by the huge palm, a strange buzzing sound came from the void. The primal chaos surged, and then there was a clear cracking sound. The silver river formed by the 3,000 silver threads in the hall shattered, and the huge palm was shattered into countless pieces and dissipated into the air. At the same time, the Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, and the other supreme experts felt relaxed, and the restrictive force disappeared. Senior, thank you for saving us. The supreme experts still had lingering fear in their hearts. After calming down, they immediately bowed to Chu Bei and thanked him. Although they didn't see Chu Bei make a move, they were sure that it was him who had resolved their crisis. After all, if there was one person who could possibly stop this supreme expert from the upper realm, it was only this mysterious person in front of them. I didn't expect you to escape from the previous calamity. The old Taoist was a bit surprised that his attack was resolved. Purple light circulated in his eyes as he opened and closed them, and it landed on Chu Bei's body, trying to see through him. This is a bit strange. After sizing him up, the old Taoist's expression immediately became serious. With his cultivation, he actually couldn't see through the person in front of him. After muttering to himself, the old Taoist frowned. He waved his right hand, and a treasured gourd appeared in his palm. Once the treasured gourd was taken out, there was nothing it couldn't break. The mouth of the gourd released a demonic light, and with a terrifying suction force, it went straight towards Chu Bei. I promise to protect these little fellows. You two better not hurt them. Chu Bei's words carried a smile. With a wave of his sleeve, an invisible force brought the old woman and the old Taoist into the distant sky. Look, it's the mysterious person who took the supreme tower in the 100-break mountain range. Is he going to make a move? He's going to fight that person who came from the sky. Is he that Taoist's opponent? Even venerables are like ants in that person's eyes. Yeah, that old Taoist has taken in at least a dozen venerables along the way. In front of him, those venerables can't resist at all. But there's something I don't understand. They seem to only attack venerables. Why don't they attack us? Maybe it's because we're too weak and haven't caught their attention. Chapter 433. On the battlefield, Chu Bei was holding a translucent, rippling sledgehammer. The intertwining black holes inside the sledgehammer made one's heart palpitate. The sledgehammer smashed down, tearing the sky apart. The black mist above the underworld earth dissipated, and the black-gray underworld earth that was covered in corpses trembled. Then, it cracked and was smashed into nothingness by the sledgehammer. How is this possible? Not only underworld earth Taoist, but the old woman beside him was also shocked. Clearly, Chu Bei's combat power had exceeded their expectations. Crack! Before underworld earth Taoist could recover from his shock, the sledgehammer swung down again. A terrifying power that could tear the world apart instantly spread from the sledgehammer to the ancient battle corpse. In an instant, the corpse of chaos that was releasing an eerie aura shattered, turning into ashes that drifted in the air. Corpse King! My Corpse King! You actually destroyed my Corpse King! Die! I want you to die! Looking at the ashes drifting in the air, Underworld Earth Taoist was in a daze at first. Then, as if he had gone mad, he roared at Chu Bei. His voice was filled with intense killing intent. Underworld Wheel! Underworld Earth Taoist roared, and a majestic divine power spread out. The void in front of him exploded, and a black wheel flew out. The wheel was stained with a lot of blood that kept dripping. This was the accumulation of countless years, and it contained the will and resentment of countless living beings. With a buzz, Underworld Earth Taoist held the wheel and smashed it toward Chu Bei, releasing a strong aura of death and chaotic energy. It was extremely powerful. At this moment, the hearts of all the supremacies in the palace trembled. Underworld Earth Taoist's attack shook the entire desolate region, as if it was about to collapse. It's such a waste for you to use this supreme weapon. Chu Bei sized up the wheel in Underworld Earth Taoist's hand, and then pointed out a finger. With a buzz, a green light like a rainbow shook the wheel away. Then, Chu Bei clenched his right hand and an irresistible devouring force sucked the treasured wheel away from Taoist Underworld Earth's control to his front. Impossible! Finally, fear appeared on Underworld Earth Taoist's face. Ever since he obtained the Underworld Wheel, he had nurtured it for countless years. But now, the supreme will passed down by the Underworld ancestor was cut off from him by this guy in front of him. Seeing this scene, some astonishment flashed in the eyes of the old woman at the side, and a serious expression appeared between her brows. When she looked at Chu Bei again, her gaze was no longer as contemptuous as before, but more vigilant. Get back here! In the sky, Priest Netherworld Earth quickly locked his fingers together in a strange, complicated motion. From the motion, a stream of light dazzled to the Netherworld Earth wheel before Chu Bei's body. In an instant, Underworld Wheel's Underworld Wheel. However, just as the Underworld Earth wheel was about to return to the Underworld Earth Taoist's hand, Chu Bei laughed disdainfully. Then, he stretched out a finger and gently tapped the wheel. Clang! With a clear metallic ring, the wheel of the Underworld shuddered, directly shattering the streak of light that the Underworld Taoist sent over. Give me back my wheel! Underworld Earth Taoist roared as he failed to summon the wheel. His terrifying aura rose again, and blood oozed out of his body. His eyes turned red, and the veins on his face bulged. Underworld Earth Taoist was completely enraged after his wheel was stolen. He burned his blood essence without care, determined to kill Chu Bei. In an instant, Underworld Earth Taoist's body was covered in a blood-red light film, as if he was a golden body. With a loud roar, he transformed into a blood-red spear, stabilizing the sky, and shot toward Chu Bei. Boom! Chu Bei stood in the void and glanced at the blood-red spear that the Taoist had transformed into. He did not move, but a blazing divine light erupted from him. In an instant, a ripple appeared in front of him, and 108 light blades rushed out from the ripple. Each light blade was white, incomparably brilliant, sacred, and dazzling. When they swept toward the blood-red spear, they left behind a trail like 108 divine chains. Clang! In an instant, the blood-red spear and the 108 light blades intertwined, exploding with a dazzling light and an incomparably terrifying spatial riot. If not for the fact that the sky had been isolated by Chu Bei, the entire desolate region would have been destroyed by this earth-shaking explosion. After the explosion, the light gradually dissipated. Pfft! The blood-red spear turned back into Underworld Earth Taoist. His body was pierced by the 108 light blades, and he was covered in bloody holes. He spat out blood, and it was a ghastly sight. What was more terrifying was that when he tried to use divine power to heal his wounds, he realized that it did not work. No matter how he healed, the wounds continued to bleed. My body is as strong as an ancient boulder. How could it be pierced? Underworld Earth Taoist shouted, as if he was unwilling to accept reality. Boom! However, just as he finished speaking, his body trembled inexplicably. The next moment, his expression became twisted, and his eyes were filled with fear. Underworld Earth Taoist seemed to have sensed something, but before he could do anything, his body and soul exploded. A ripple spread out, and the blood-red she was cleansed, leaving behind a gourd. "Just who are you?" The old woman came back to her senses and quickly retreated. Her body trembled, and her voice was trembling. They had misjudged him. This guy, who they had thought of as an ant, was too terrifying. The 5 elements sword that the other party used was linked together, and the power was linked together. It attacked from all directions without any openings. "Unfortunately, your opponent is this great one." After praising, Chu Bei's tone suddenly changed. "In front of absolute power, all struggles are futile." After his indifferent voice sounded, Chu Bei waved his sleeve, and 3,000 balls of light immediately appeared around him. Each ball of light was like a bright and dazzling scorching sun. Before the old woman's 5 divine swords pierced through, the 3,000 balls of light connected with each other. With a hong sound, they spread outwards and swallowed the 5 old women at the same time. Chi chi chi. One could vaguely hear the old women's miserable cries from within the 3,000 balls of light, as well as the sharp sounds of sword radiance, moving about. The 3,000 balls of light exploded. Amidst the cries of pain and sorrow, a rain of blood rose, and the 5 figures exploded one after another. When the sky where Chu Bei was returned to dead silence, he focused his gaze. The old woman's figure had disappeared, and only a bamboo basket was left. "Did you see that? He won, the mysterious man won. He killed the 2 guys who came down from the sky. He is so powerful. There is actually such a terrifying person in the waste region. Who knows where he came from? I will worship him in the future. He is simply the most powerful person in the world." The battle ended, and the cultivators in every corner of the waste region came to their senses. They looked at the figure in the sky, and their eyes were filled with admiration and respect. In the Stone Kingdom Imperial Palace, the Stone Emperor, the Fire Emperor, the Ghost King, the 9-headed lion, and the other venerables looked at Chu Bei in the sky in a daze. When they came to their senses, they looked at each other with excitement on their faces. "Senior, he won! In that case, we don't have to die." The Fae, the primordial demon butterfly, and the other venerables immediately bowed deeply to Chu Bei, and the respect in their eyes was even more intense. This mysterious man was really too powerful. He was so powerful that he could kill 2 giants from the upper world with just a casual attack. It should be known that these 2 giants were the main culprits behind the calamity of the wasteland region. However, even such terrifying existences with indestructible bodies had died in the hands of this mysterious senior. Not even their corpses were left behind. "Who is he?" At this moment, the other giants in the waste region, who were looking for opportunities, looked at Chu Bei in astonishment. Especially the 6 giants in the sky above the medicine capital. The disdain in their eyes was replaced by seriousness. In terms of strength, both the old Taoist and the old woman were weaker than them by 1 realm. However, no matter what, they were still sect leaders of the upper world. However, such figures were killed by an existence from the lower world not long after their arrival. How could this not be terrifying? The ancient woman with polychoria looked at Chu Bei and sighed faintly, as if she felt sorry for the dead Taoist and the old woman. Chapter 434. High up in the sky, Chu Bei slowly descended with his hands behind his back under the grateful gazes of all the supreme experts in the imperial palace. "Master, you're too powerful!" As soon as Chu Bei sat down, Shihao couldn't help but pounce on him. "Cultivate well. In the near future, you'll be able to kill them easily too." Chu Bei pinched Shihao's cheeks. "Senior, weren't the gourd and basket used by the 2 evil men to capture supreme experts?" The Fey supreme expert looked at the gourd and basket floating beside Chu Bei with lingering fear. Chu Bei nodded slightly with a smile on his face. Then, he waved his sleeve. "One!" The gourd and basket shook at the same time, releasing azure light. Balls of light flew out one after another, enlarging until they landed on the plaza in front of the main hall. A horned dragon roared towards the sky. Its entire body was covered in cold green light. It turned into tens of thousands of zhanglong, and its roar was filled with fear. A blue-eyed golden-eyed beast with flickering scales appeared. It was like a qilin. After landing, it curled up and shivered. A huge silver snake with a length of tens of thousands of zhang coiled around the plaza. It was incomparably nervous and couldn't help but tremble. In the blink of an eye, dozens of archaic creatures appeared in the plaza. All of them were powerful supreme experts, and there was no lack of human supreme experts among them. However, these supreme experts of the wasteland region were trembling all over. Their eyes were filled with fear. They seemed to have suffered quite a bit of shock. Supreme Demon Spirit, Supreme Shan Kuei, Supreme Sky Spider. You've all been rescued by Senior Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, Nine-Headed Lion, and the other supreme experts immediately flew into the plaza to comfort the supreme experts who were captured by Taoist Underworld Earth and the old woman. Gradually, these supreme experts calmed down. After confirming their safety, they knelt in front of Chu Bei one after another and thanked him with incomparable respect. They had personally experienced the terror of Taoist Underworld Earth and the old woman. Even though they were powerful, they couldn't resist at all. However, these two giants were killed by this mysterious person in front of them. All of you rise. I'm just doing it in passing. Chu Bei raised his hand again, and an invisible force lifted these supreme experts from the ground. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, a few more images appeared above the ancient altar. Netherworld, see, that's the heavenly domain. Look, a big shot from the flood domain has also arrived. It's also a massacre. The great calamity of the universe has also arrived. When the Venerable Ones saw the additional image, they looked at each other with sympathy. At that moment, among the 8 domains of the universe, the other 7 domains were the same as the wasteland. Strange phenomena appeared in the distant sky. Dozens of doors were formed, and one after another, giants descended from them. Some of them were searching for precious treasures left behind in the lower realms, and some were like Taoist Underworld Earth and the old woman in the wasteland, and they were harvesting experts above the Exalt realm. In just a few short minutes, the originally peaceful and quiet 7 territories fell into a state of panic due to the arrival of the giants from the upper realm. The continuous mountains exploded, and the great rivers were annihilated. One after another, Venerable Ones who were either in deep sleep or in seclusion fled for their lives. Their terrified screams were filled with fear. In the 7 territories, all the cultivators below the Exalt realm looked at the images projected by the ancient altar in horror. While their faces were pale, they were powerless to do anything. In the face of the giants from the upper realm, even the Venerable Ones were just ants, let alone them. These damned bastards! They actually treated the 8 territories as a cage and treated us as medicinal herbs. When I cultivate to their level, I will kill my way to the upper realm and use blood to wash away the hatred in my heart. I pity the Venerable Ones of the other 7 territories. It's difficult for them to escape this calamity. In the Stone Country Imperial Palace, the Stone Emperor, the Fire Emperor, the Nine-Headed Lion, and the other Venerable Ones looked at the images of the other 7 territories above the ancient altar. Their faces were extremely gloomy, and they clenched their fists. While their eyes were filled with monstrous hatred, there was also joy. Fortunately, there was a mysterious and powerful existence in the wasteland. Otherwise, they would have suffered the same fate as the Venerable Ones of the other 7 territories. This bunch of bastards who treat human lives like grass indeed deserved to be killed. Just as the Venerable Ones' faces were filled with anger and their mouths were chattering non-stop, Chu Bei put down the tea in his hand and stood up from his chair. He looked at the images of the 7 territories above the ancient altar and frowned. When Chu Bei's calm voice sounded, the void around him suddenly trembled. To be more precise, the entire void of the wasteland, or even the void beyond the wasteland, trembled rhythmically at the same time. In the next moment, endless divine light rushed out from every corner of the wasteland and surged into Chu Bei's body. In a few breaths' time, Chu Bei's body became transparent. The chaotic fog around him surged like a great river, and its power was monstrous. Split! As Chu Bei's voice sounded, a dazzling light suddenly erupted from his body. In that instant, the Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, and the other venerable ones realized that the divine power in their bodies had stopped circulating. They instinctively closed their eyes, and when they opened them again, they realized that the dazzling light around Chu Bei's body had dissipated. What made them even more surprised was that there were 7 identical Chu Bei in front of Chu Bei. It was somewhat similar to the 5 elements sword that the old woman used. However, the biggest difference was that these 7 Chu Bei were far more powerful than the old woman. What kind of precious technique is this? Almost at the same time, all the big shots in the wasteland, including the 6 big shots above the medicine capital, looked over with astonishment. Their faces were filled with disbelief, and their eyes were filled with greed. In the palace, the venerable ones were also stunned. They stared blankly at the 8 identical Chu Bei in front of them. Their expressions were lifeless, as if they had lost their souls. Senior, you want to... In the palace square, the Stone Emperor, Fire Emperor, and the other venerable ones looked at the 8 Chu Bei with astonishment. They were in a daze. The 8 regions were originally 1. Now that the 7 regions are in trouble, I can't just stand by and watch. Chu Bei looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, pretending to be melancholic. Just as Chu Bei sighed, the 7 identical figures in front of him broke through the void at the same time and flew in different directions. Wang Wang Wang! In the next moment, 7 huge images appeared in the distant sky, projecting the tragic state of the 7 regions. Look at the sky! What are those places? So it's all true! It's said that outside the wasteland, there are 7 big regions. Heavens! Those 7 big regions are in the same situation as us. They're also being attacked by those evil people who came down from the sky. When the 7 images of the 7 regions appeared in the sky, the expressions of all the cultivators in the wasteland changed. Their faces were filled with anger and pity. At the same time, the sound of explosions and mournful cries could be heard everywhere in the 7 regions. In the heaven region, a one-armed old man was walking. With every step he took, the ground and mountains under his feet would explode. Then, there would be mournful cries as powerful venerable ones were captured one after another. In the earth region, a child who looked less than 10 years old was waving a folding fan in his hand, releasing a monstrous aura as he waved it. Everywhere he passed, all living beings fled in panic. In the mystic region, a 3-eyed old man descended like a god. His 3rd vertical eye shot out dazzling light from time to time, and a terrifying aura circulated. One could faintly see mysterious and incomprehensible symbols. Every time the light shot out, it would be accompanied by a mournful cry. In the yellow region, a hunchbacked woman held a silver necklace. Like a fisherman casting a net, every time she passed by a blessed land, she would immediately capture the venerable ones inside. No matter how these venerable ones struggled or begged for mercy, it was all in vain. Is the wasteland going to be destroyed? All the cultivators in the 7 regions looked up at the terrifying beings who came down from the upper realm to slaughter them, their faces ashen. In the Aeon region, the Dark North sect, the number 1 sect in the wasteland. Today was supposed to be the day of the sect's internal competition, but the lively atmosphere was instantly replaced by fear when a gray-robed old man appeared. He's here! He's here! Can the sect master and the others escape this disaster? What did we do wrong? Who is he? How can there be such a terrifying existence in this world? The disciples of the Dark North sect gathered in the huge square and looked at the sky anxiously. There, the gray-robed old man's robe fluttered, and his burning gaze was as if he was looking at his prey. Opposite him were 4 middle-aged men wearing the robes of the Dark North sect. One of them had a golden crown on his head, and his aura had reached the peak of the venerable realm. You'll suffer retribution for your actions sooner or later. The sect master of the Dark North sect glared fiercely at the gray-robed old man. Retribution? Do you think you can do that? The gray-robed old man glanced at the man with the golden crown with disdain. As soon as he finished his sarcastic words, he directly slapped down with his palm. If you give me another 300 years, I'll definitely suppress you. The Dark North sect master and the three venerables behind him could not move at all as they watched the giant palm fall. Under this suppressive force, they could not do anything. However, just as the four of them were waiting for death with unwillingness in their eyes, a buzzing sound suddenly rang in their ears. Then, they felt a cool breeze blow past them. Then, with a loud bang, the giant palm of the gray-robed man exploded. Who's there? The gray-robed man from the upper realm immediately shouted. He turned his head around and scanned the surroundings. His divine sense spread out to the maximum. As for the Dark North sect master and the three venerables behind him, their bodies trembled slightly, and their faces were filled with confusion. If it weren't for the fact that the laws of this world are incomplete, with your aptitude, you'd be able to kill him in 100 years. At this moment, an extremely calm voice echoed in the sky above the Dark North sect. Then, the void rippled, and a young man in a long robe who seemed to be in his 20s walked out from it. With his hands behind his back, he looked calm and composed. This young man was naturally one of the 7 doppelgangers of Chu Bei. You are. Looking at Chu Bei, who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, the Dark North sect master was stunned. Where did this ant come from? Trying to act mysterious. The gray-robed man glanced at Chu Bei coldly. He stretched out his right hand again, and a ball of black nether fire appeared in his palm. It shattered the void and enveloped Chu Bei. A mere heavenly god can only bully these lower realm cultivators. Chu Bei did not even look at the black nether fire that was about to envelop him. With a casual wave of his sleeve, the black nether fire dissipated. In terms of strength, this gray-robed man was 1 realm lower than the old woman from the waste region and the underworld Earth Taoist. Who are you? The moment Chu Bei made his move, the gray-robed man's expression changed. He knew that he had made a mistake. The person in front of him was definitely not weaker than him. It was just that the other party had some kind of secret technique to hide his divine energy. The gray-robed man was very decisive. His entire body lit up with a strange light as he broke through the void and prepared to escape. Swoosh! However, the moment the gray-robed man entered the void, a giant chaotic palm directly restrained him and dragged him out of the crack in the void. Under such an overwhelming force, the gray-robed man did not have the slightest ability to resist. Even the divine fire that was already ignited was extinguished at this moment. The gray-robed man looked at Chu Bei, and an inexplicable sense of fear welled up in his heart. He wanted to open his mouth and beg for mercy, but the invisible force suppressed him until he did not even have the strength to speak. Bam! The giant chaotic palm suddenly clenched, and the gray-robed man let out a shrill cry in the midst of the explosion. However, this scream came quickly and left even faster. In an instant, it disappeared along with his body as it transformed into a bloody mist. So powerful! He's dead! The person from the upper realm is dead! The Dark North sect master and the 3 honorables behind him looked at the bloody mist floating in the distance. Their faces were filled with horror. A taboo existence from the upper realm, an existence that they could not resist at all, was casually crushed to death like an ant. Hiss! The Dark North sect master and the others shifted their gazes to Chu Bei and immediately gasped. At the same time, they were extremely respectful. Their voices trembled as they asked, "Sir, you are?" Chu Bei smiled and did not answer the Dark North sect master's question. Instead, he stretched out his hand and pointed to the sky. Immediately, the images of the other 7 regions appeared in the sky. Chapter 435. Thank you, sir, for saving us. Looking at the scene in the sky, the North Nether sect master and the 3 venerables behind him narrowed their eyes. They looked at each other in dismay, and there was only astonishment on their faces. To their disbelief, in the other 7 regions, other than the desolate region, there were people who looked exactly like the mysterious man in front of them. They were slaughtering the giants from the upper realm. The scene in the heavenly region. The one-armed old man walked in the mountains. With every step he took, the ground below would explode. He arrived in front of a huge mountain. With the point of his finger, the mountain cracked. A white tiger with wings was shivering. The white tiger begged, but the one-armed old man was indifferent. He grabbed it with his hand. At this moment, a figure appeared from the void. Using his hand as a blade, he slashed down. Before the one-armed old man could react, he turned into a pile of minced meat with a bang, leaving behind the white tiger with a frightened expression. The scene in the earthly region. A child who looked less than 10 years old came above a large river. He waved the folding fan in his hand, and the river immediately surged. A creature with a human body and a fishtail kowtowed and begged for mercy. The child was expressionless. However, when he waved the folding fan again, a figure walked out from the sky. With a punch, the child's folding fan turned into nothingness, and his body exploded into a bloody mist. The scene in the mystic region. The 3-eyed old man is like a god descending on top of a valley. His 3rd vertical eye shoots out a bright beam of light into the valley. With a loud bang, a golden pangolin that is 10 meters long flies out while trembling non-stop. Buzz! When the 3-eyed old man captured the golden pangolin, the void in front of him rippled. A young man appeared out of thin air and pointed at his 3rd eye. With a mournful howl, the 3rd eye exploded along with the old man's body. The scene in the earthly region. A hunchbacked woman holding a silver necklace appeared above a huge sect. The venerables below her were terrified. However, when the woman threw out the silver necklace, a translucent fist formed from primal chaos smashed down. With just one punch, the woman was smashed into pieces. She did not even have time to scream. Then, under the shocked gaze of the sect master, a young man in a long robe calmly walked out of the void. In the North Nether sect, a group of disciples stared blankly at the scene in the sky. It was only after a long time that they regained their senses. Sect leader and the others are saved. That big shot from the upper realm is dead. Oh my God! What kind of method was that? He actually appeared in another region at the same time. Who the hell is he? The disciples of the North Nether sect stared at Chu Bei in a daze. They were discussing and guessing the identity of Chu Bei. Sir, thank you for saving my life. I wonder if you can tell me your Taoist name? My sect can also worship your statue on a daily basis. The North Nether sect leader bowed deeply to Chu Bei in an extremely respectful manner. I am a heavenly merchant. In this life, you can call me Boss Chu. As soon as the sect leader of North Nether sect finished speaking, Chu Bei's indifferent voice reverberated throughout the 8 regions like rolling thunder. Merchant? He's Boss Chu. What? Do you know this savior? This? I just found out. Then why are you shouting? When the 8 regions in the lower realm heard the rolling thunder, they instantly became noisy and filled every corner. Inside the Stone Kingdom Palace in the Waste Realm, the Fire Emperor, the Stone Emperor, the 9-headed lion, and the other honorables looked at the 7 images in the sky. They were so shocked that they could not close their mouths. Although it was only 7 clones, these 7 clones still had the terrifying strength to easily kill the big shots from the upper realm. As time passed, the other big shots in the Waste Realm looked at Chu Bei one by one. Their expressions became more and more solemn. As for Chu Bei, his attention was focused on the system interface in his mind. Although the system did not give out any missions related to reputation points in the perfect world, ever since he had split into 7 clones to kill the big shots in the 7 regions and shouted Boss Chu in the 8 regions, his reputation points in the perfect world had increased rapidly. Senior, where are you going? In the palace square, the group of honorables could not help but ask when they saw Chu Bei taking a step forward. The first spiritual route. Chu Bei pointed in the direction of the medicine capital. His lips moved slightly, and 4 syllables came out of his mouth. After speaking, Chu Bei's clothes fluttered. He was as transcendent as a true immortal. He took a step forward, and the sky split open. Accompanied by thunder, the supreme aura made people tremble. "Wait for me!" The moment Chu Bei walked into the crack, the desolate tower turned into a stream of light and landed on Chu Bei's shoulder. In the next moment, the man and the tower disappeared from the square. When everyone saw Chu Bei again, he had already appeared in the sky above the medicine capital with the desolate tower. At the same time, the sky above the medicine capital had become a battlefield. Although there were only 6 big shots here, they were the true overlords of the upper realm. They were all great cultivators in the self-release realm, not far from the supreme realm. They only had one goal in the lower realm, and that was the first spiritual root floating in the sky. When Chu Bei arrived in the sky above the medicine capital, the originally chaotic battle immediately calmed down. The 6 big shots seemed to have scattered at the same time, all of them staring at Chu Bei with overcast expressions. As for the dual-pupiled woman who joined later, she only gave the first spiritual root not far away a look with a bit of unwillingness, and then she stopped in her place, as if she became a bystander. "Boss Chu? This emperor has lived for tens of thousands of years, so why have I never heard of this name before?" The big shot who spoke wore a black robe. His original form was that of a black gold sparrow. He cultivated for tens of thousands of years, and in the end, he became one of the higher realms' overlords. "Have you ever heard of it before? What kind of influence does it have on this great one?" Chu Bei smiled as he looked at the black gold sparrow. When he faced Chu Bei's mocking gaze, the black gold sparrow's expression immediately became ugly. Powerful pressure poured out from his body, surrounding Chu Bei. However, when this wave of pressure was about 10 meters away from Chu Bei, with a honglong noise, it was crushed by a formless force. "Fellow cultivator, have you been living in the lower realms all this time?" another big shot asked. His entire body was shrouded in a hazy mist, and one could only see his general figure, but not his full appearance. Tens of thousands of years ago, he accidentally obtained a chaotic treasure technique. After he cultivated it to the advanced stage, he was called the chaotic immortal in the upper realms. He was testing if this mysterious person, who was not weaker than them, had really been living in the lower realms all this time. Then the lower realms were far more complicated than they had imagined. Who knew if there was a second or third person like him in the lower realms? However, what made him unhappy was that the mysterious person in front of him seemed to have seen through his thoughts. He just smiled at him, and did not answer his question. "Has the little guy Shuri been saved?" Chu Bei did not pay attention to the 6 big shots from the upper realms. Instead, he looked at the dual-pupiled woman who was watching from afar. "He's still a little short. If he can get the help of the first spiritual root, he can wake up in less than 3 months. The dual-pupiled woman stretched out her slender finger and pointed at the floating first spiritual root in the distance. "This spiritual root is already mine. You should find another way." Chu Bei's voice was calm, but it carried a supreme dignity that could not be refused. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the dual-pupiled woman shook her head and sighed. When he appeared in the sky above the medicine capital, she already knew that she would not be able to achieve her goal. "Your Excellency is too savage. You actually dare to say that the first spiritual root is already yours. Are you looking down on us?" Another big shot spoke. There was a broken tower above his head. It only had 2 floors and was as white as jade. It covered his body and protected him below. It looked extremely powerful. "Give me back the tower!" Without waiting for Chu Bei to speak, the desolate tower on his shoulder spoke first. Then, the tower trembled, and endless flames swept through the sky. "I've been looking for you for tens of thousands of years, but to no avail. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. You are truly blessed by the heavens." When the Taoist saw the desolate tower, he laughed loudly. He was one of the big shots who had lived the longest in the upper realm. He was known as the Yin-Yang Taoist, and his cultivation was extremely terrifying. When he saw the desolate tower, he was stunned at first, but when he came to his senses, he became extremely excited. At the same time, the two floors of the tower above his head showed yin and yang, and two kinds of energy fell down. Is this the tower's main body? When the desolate tower appeared, the big shots all revealed burning gazes. Their desire was no less than the desire for the first spiritual root. The reason why the yin-yang Taoist could move unhindered in the upper realm was because of his terrifying strength. However, the most important reason was that he had obtained this broken tower by chance. This is what I promise you. You can just watch from the side. Just as the desolate tower was about to rush toward the yin-yang Taoist, Chu Bei released a wisp of chaotic energy and pulled it back. Once the tower is complete, I will have a chance to become a supreme being. The yin-yang Taoist was extremely excited. When he took a step forward, he crushed the void. His physical body was so terrifying that it was unbelievable. He took the initiative to attack Chu Bei. Boom! The yin-yang Taoist had seen Chu Bei's techniques before, so he attacked with his strongest attack. The broken tower above his head circulated the yin and yang qi. His eyes shone brightly, and two terrifying beams of light shot out. One was black, and the other was white. They shattered the heavens and the earth and were aimed at Chu Bei. Chu Bei did not move. He did not dodge. His robe fluttered in the wind. He pointed at the sky with one hand and the earth with the other. Then, he slowly combined them. The stars in the sky appeared and disappeared in his hands. The moment he put his hands together, there was a boom. An eternal divine light that seemed to be able to stop the river of time shot out like a sharp blade toward the yin-yang Taoist. Bang! In the loud sound, the two beams of light shot out by the yin-yang Taoist were destroyed. Then, there was a metallic clang. The broken tower above the yin-yang Taoist's head was sent flying far away. At the same time, the eternal light pierced through the tower. Puff! Accompanied by a shrill scream, the yin-yang Taoist spat out golden blood, and his face turned pale. This is our chance! Right at that moment, the other 5 leaders' eyes shone brightly. They reached out at the same time as if they wanted to seize the broken tower. This was a supreme treasure. Now, it was out of the yin-yang Taoist's control and became an ownerless object. How dare you! This is my body! Seeing this, the ancient wasteland tower was furious. It shouted at the 5 leaders. The 2-layered tower was its lost body. It fell off during the archaic battle. Now that it had found it with great difficulty, how could it allow others to get their hands on it? After the shout, the ancient wasteland tower shook violently. Its body was white and translucent. It began to shoot out chaotic sword energy to attack the 5 leaders. Seizing its body was the same as fighting it to the death. You're just an artifact. You've only gained sentience. Shouldn't you be looking for a new master? A large golden palm slammed down and collided with the chaotic sword energy. Dang-dang sounds rang out and sparks flew in all directions. It was a shocking scene. This leader was the Western sect's leader. He had cultivated the Zhang 6 golden body to the extreme. It was as sturdy as an ancient boulder. Find a new master? What a joke! How much do you know about this world? You are nothing more than an ant that lives at the lowest level. The ancient wasteland tower shouted. Its words were full of mockery. Chi! The black gold sparrow giant also made his move. 10 black feathers shot out from his fingertips. Even though each feather was only a foot long, they flowed with black light and were incomparably sharp. They collided with the chaotic sword energy and created an ear-splitting noise. The 3rd leader quickly formed an imprint with his hands. A large amount of heaven and earth's spiritual energy surged from all directions. It surged like a great river and emitted endless light as it surrounded the 2-layered tower. The 4th leader took out a divine disc. Even though it was damaged, its might was astonishing. With a light shake, tens of thousands of spirits emerged from the disc. There were Taotais, golden crows, Pai Xiao, and others. They turned into traces of Tao and rushed towards the broken two-layered tower. This was a frightening battle. Chapter 436. However, right when the battlefield above the medicine capital became incomparably chaotic, that ruined pagoda changing owners from time to time, a miserable howl sounded from not too far away. This miserable cry came precisely from that yin-yang Taoist's mouth. The giants who were currently fighting looked towards the source of the sound, seeing the final scene. They only saw Chu Bei raise his fist, smashing outwards. The surface of his fist was wrapped in a layer of hazy white light, the black light terrifying to the soul. Unmatched great Tao energy swirled within, directly smashing into the body of the yin-yang Taoist whose face was full of fear. Because the other giants were all focused on the ruined pagoda's second floor, no one knew what happened during this period of time. They only saw the final result. The yin-yang Taoist was the same as them, already entering the self-release realm, one of the higher realm's most powerful giants. He was impervious to fire and water, able to penetrate metal and stone, a single thought able to enter the great void. His flesh was powerful to the extreme, yet right now, his body broke apart. The yin-yang Taoist had cultivated for endless years his seniority in the higher realm's most ancient generation. His strength was powerful beyond compare. Even if they faced him, their chances of victory would only be 50-50. However, it was precisely this type of higher realm overlord that had his body blasted apart by that mysterious person in just a few breaths of time. What was even more frightening was that the power that mysterious person used could actually prevent the other party's body from recovering. Bloody mist pervaded the air. A small figure with black and white stripes rushed into the sky, wishing to escape. That was the yin-yang Taoist's primordial spirit. It was wrapped within yin and yang energies, actually not immediately erased. However, the moment this primordial spirit had just escaped into the void, a wave of chaotic energy spread from Chu Bei's palm, wrapping around that primordial spirit. In the end, this primordial spirit only struggled for 2 seconds before exploding, turning into black and white energies, scattering into the air. A higher realm overlord had his body and soul wiped out. While looking at the disappearing black and white energies, the remaining 5 giants' minds immediately trembled. When they looked at Chu Bei again, apart from being serious, there was also a bit of vigilance and restraining fear. The yin-yang Taoist who had shaken the past and dazzled the present in the higher realms fell just like that, dying in the lower realms. This exceeded their expectations. Return! Right at this moment, while the giants were still immersed in this inconceivable battle result, the desolate tower released a loud shout. Following that, the tower released several silver light rays that intertwined and twisted together, wrapping around the 2-story tower and dragging it back. Some of the 5 giants noticed the ancient desolate tower's actions, but none of them paid any attention to it. That was because they were no longer invincible, and there was only one person who could obliterate them. When they looked at the woman with double pupils in the distance again, they seemed to have guessed that she had fought with the mysterious person, and there was a strange look in their eyes. Under the gazes of the 5 great leaders, Chu Bei slowly floated to the side of the desolate tower. "I'll help you fuse." After Chu Bei spoke calmly, he pointed his finger and a beam of light landed on the broken 2-story pagoda. Then, he pointed his finger at the ancient desolate tower. Under Chu Bei's guidance, the ancient desolate pagoda's white radiance sprinkled down and met with the 2-story pagoda. "Wait till I become one. Let's see what you can do to me." The pagoda was spotlessly white. Even though it was made of bone, it was sparkling and translucent like jade. The 2 parts of the pagoda started to fuse together. The parts that fused together were like white jade. They first became soft, then sticky, and finally fused together. Even though they had been separated for tens of thousands of years, the 2 parts were once one. There was an unbreakable bond between them. As time passed, the 2 parts of the pagoda became more and more compatible. The 5 great leaders' expressions were ugly. They stared at the two parts of the pagoda unwillingly. If it were not for Chu Bei's presence, they would not have watched the two parts fuse together. Fuse! After a while, a loud shout was heard. The small pagoda rushed up and emitted an immeasurable amount of divine light. Its aura suddenly increased dramatically. Thank you for your help! After tens of thousands of years, the ancient desolate tower was finally complete. Even though its injuries were not healed, its aura was many times more powerful than before. After thanking Chu Bei, the ancient desolate tower aimed at the black-robed giant. Black Gold Sparrow, you were the most aggressive when you tried to steal the pagoda. You even dared to injure my real body. Let's see how I deal with you now. The ancient desolate tower's cold voice was filled with anger. The ancient desolate tower's body emitted talisman symbols. In an instant, it arrived in front of the Black Gold Sparrow. Its aura was extremely powerful. The bottom of the ancient desolate tower was hollow. At this moment, it was like a mouth. It was unexpectedly chasing and biting the Black Gold Sparrow. It was shocking. After successfully fusing the two broken layers of the pagoda, the ancient desolate tower's innate magical ability was finally displayed. It possessed extreme speed and could control space. After a few short exchanges, the Black Gold Sparrow realized that it was no match for the pagoda. It reverted to its original form and let out a deafening bird cry. It continuously flapped its wings and broke through the void. However, the ancient desolate tower's innate magical ability was too terrifying. It was as if it had sunk into a swamp. It could only fly a few meters each time. It was obvious that the ancient desolate tower had suffered a loss from the Black Gold Sparrow in the previous battle. At this moment, it was crazily taking revenge. It imprisoned the void, bound the Black Gold Sparrow, and madly chased and bit it. Witnessing this scene, the other four great leaders could not help but twitch the corners of their mouths. How was this still a pagoda? It was simply a hungry wolf. The taste is really not bad. The ancient desolate tower continuously gnawed at the Black Gold Sparrow. The latter's black feathers fluttered about. Kingqiang sounds rang out as it continuously cried out. Soon after, the Black Gold Sparrow was half bald. Most of its feathers had fallen off. Its entire body was pitch black. It was furious and humiliated. This was a type of extraordinary humiliation. The ancient desolate tower seemed to have eaten its fill. It returned to Chu Bei's side and proudly swayed left and right towards the Black Gold Sparrow. Even though its two pagodas merged into one, greatly increasing its strength, if it wanted to kill a higher realm overlord like the Black Gold Sparrow, it was still extremely difficult. Chu Bei smiled as he gave the ancient desolate tower a look. Then, his eyes swept past the five great leaders. He pointed at the first spiritual root and said, "Who else wants to fight with this great one?" When his indifferent voice sounded, 7 ripples appeared behind Chu Bei. Then, 7 identical Chu Bei walked out one after another. They stood in a row and coldly stared at the 5 great leaders. Hiss! When they saw the 7 people who appeared behind Chu Bei and sensed the aura they inadvertently released, the 5 great leaders couldn't help but suck in a deep breath. What they didn't dare imagine was that these 7 people's auras weren't any weaker than theirs, to the extent where they were even above theirs. In that instant, the 5 great leaders gave each other a look. They looked at each other in dismay, none of them saying anything. Since no one wants to fight over it, then this great one will accept this spiritual root. When his indifferent voice sounded, Chu Bei walked towards the first spiritual root. Qi La. The first spiritual root seemed to have sensed a threat. Its roots danced about, tearing apart the void and whipping towards Chu Bei. The reason why after tens of thousands of years passed, the higher realms giants still couldn't obtain the first spiritual root, apart from because they would always fight against each other, the main reason was that this first spiritual root's strength was already equivalent to a self-released higher realm overlord. Moreover, if not for the fact that the spiritual root had serious Tao injuries, it could wipe out these so-called higher realm overlords with a wave of its branches. Walala! Towards the first spiritual root's attack, Chu Bei didn't dodge, not paying it any attention. However, just as those strands were about to hit Chu Bei, the void behind him started to tremble inexplicably. Immediately afterwards, an iron lump strangely appeared. The iron lump seemed to have been provoked. He reached out a hand, several streaks of strange light shooting out from his palm. They gathered together, forming a streak of rainbow, striking towards the first spiritual root. The first spiritual root seemed to have sensed danger. Its roots immediately flowed with brilliant colors, dense light mist rising. All of its strength poured into those roots, facing the strange radiance released by the iron lump. The two attacks interweaved. However, the moment they made contact, with a chi-la sound, the first spiritual root's roots immediately snapped, falling from the sky. Then, that spiritual root that was more than 10 meters thick released a kacha sound, producing a crisp sound, actually splitting apart a long and thin crack. This wasn't a fight on the same level at all. Just as the iron lump waved its arms again and was about to hit the first spiritual root, the first spiritual root released a blurry light and made a whining sound, as though it was begging for mercy. The iron lump withdrew its right arm, releasing an endless amount of bright green light to cover the first spiritual root. In the end, under everyone's astonished gaze, the iron lump and the first spiritual root entered Chu Bei's body and disappeared. Host has successfully obtained the first spiritual root. Reward Xiaohei's strength. Once, hearing the system notification, Chu Bei immersed his consciousness in his sea of consciousness. In the vast sea of consciousness, the first spiritual root floated. At this moment, the primordial chaos venerable, Black Golden Sparrow, and the rest of the 5 supreme leaders looked at Chu Bei in a daze, as though they couldn't believe what they had just seen. After a long while, they couldn't help but look at each other. They could see the intense shock in each other's eyes. "Senior, he killed another supreme leader!" The broken tower that the supreme leader had was actually a part of the ancient desolate tower. The power of one person shocked all the supreme leaders from the upper realm. "Senior is actually so terrifying!" In the palace, the Stone Emperor, the Fire Emperor, and the rest of the supreme leaders looked at Chu Bei in disbelief. Their eyes were filled with horror. Gradually, the supreme leaders from the waste region who had come down from the upper realm stopped what they were doing and looked at Chu Bei in astonishment. Their faces were filled with disbelief. As one of the supreme leaders of the upper realm, the Yin-Yang Taoist was killed by that mysterious person just like that. The waters of the lower realm are deeper than we thought. Even we have the possibility of dying. One of the supreme leaders sighed. Who was that iron lump just now? The ancient desolate tower flew to Chu Bei's side. Other than curiosity, there was even more intense shock in its eyes. As an existence from the same era as the first spiritual root, it naturally knew how terrifying it was. In that era, the first spiritual root, at its peak, had swept through countless large regions in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Although the first spiritual root had suffered a serious injury, it would not easily submit to others. Moreover, the other party was an unknown iron lump. Even the first spiritual root had submitted to the iron lump. What kind of terrifying existence was he? You will know in the future. Chu Bei glanced at the ancient desolate tower and pretended to be mysterious. Then, his gaze fell on the remaining 5 supreme leaders. How long do you plan to stay here? Or do you want to stay here forever? Chu Bei's voice became deep as he spoke the second half of his sentence. A tyrannical aura was faintly discernible, as if it would burst out from his body at any time. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the 5 supreme leaders' expressions became extremely ugly. He was clearly threatening them to leave. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.